There are three types of crazy people you will see on the battlefield. Those who have completely lost their minds and are only looking for a place to die. Those who are consumed by hatred, unable to see anything around them. And then Ian, a mysterious young man back then, began to read some incredibly strange words. Watching this, Mason exclaimed in utter confusion, "What? What is he mumbling about?" Standing nearby, Logan suddenly shouted out in annoyance, "Move! Get out of the way! I told you to get out of the way." However, Ian didn't care much and kept right on going. Logan immediately raised his crossbow with a face full of resentment, muttering and grumbling, "This bastard." Out of nowhere, Ian ripped the scroll in his hand right in half in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, a beam of light flashed down from the sky. Both Mason and Logan shouted in unison, "What the hell is that?" Lightning. A bolt of lightning struck right where they were standing. Both Logan and Mason were blown away by the lightning strike. They both screamed in agony, "Help!" Charging straight ahead without any armor or shield. Baiko is curious about your real identity, a crazy mage. Baiko is curious about your real identity, a crazy mage. Suddenly, a truck came rushing right at Ian. Dead on impact, Ian thought to himself, "Life really is a bitch. Just when I thought my college life was finally about to start, I never expected to die like a dog in a place like this." But when I opened my eyes, I had reincarnated as Ian, the son of a peasant. Right at that moment, his mother and father cried out in shock. "Unbelievable, black hair! My family, poor peasants in the empire, left me and my sister alone when our parents and two older brothers went out to work. My sister and I could only wander around all day scavenging for food." Standing not far away, a few other kids shouted out to mock him, "Look at the crow, how disgusting." Ian, who was sitting there eating grilled fish, glanced at those kids and couldn't help but fall deep into thought. It's not like I want to be born with black hair either. Damn medieval times, I got reincarnated, and yet I still have to live in such grinding poverty. Suddenly, something popped up and caught his attention. Is this my status window? The screen displayed the information, Ian Raven. The system notified that you are a nobody. Hearing that, he froze, unable to do anything but lament his own fate. Crap, even if a status window shows up, there's absolutely nothing I can do. Even if I grind and toil every single day, it will still be a life of debt where I gain absolutely nothing. Inheriting that kind of life from my parents, I wouldn't even dare to dream of any job other than farming. I never even had the chance to learn anything else. I believe that if I were educated, I could excel at anything. I wonder if there is any place willing to take me in. However, Ian's train of thought was interrupted by Min's wide-eyed gaze. She looked at him and pointed her finger at her own tiny, drooling mouth. Then she excitedly told him, "Let's go eat dessert." He also enthusiastically chimed in, "All right, let's go." A moment later, in another part of the forest, Ian instructed Min, "Don't wander off too far." Min's son gave a gentle nod, completely focused on happily munching on some dessert berries. He looked at her and smiled softly, thinking it felt like just yesterday he taught the little girl how to eat dessert. She's growing up so fast. Right at that moment, a noise coming from nearby caught Ian's attention. He noticed a massive dark shadow lurking in the bushes nearby. Seeing this, Ian stepped closer to investigate, and immediately after, he shrieked in horror as he realized what it was. It was a massive bear that suddenly appeared with blood-red eyes. It roared loudly right in front of Ian and Min. Within a split second, it extended its razor-sharp claws, aiming straight for the two of them. Ian quickly held Min tight in his arms. He hastily backed away in pure terror. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning out of nowhere struck the bear directly. A bolt of lightning out of nowhere struck the bear directly. It finally collapsed to the ground right before the two children's eyes. Right then, Ian heard a human voice calling out. Ian was a bit wary of the person in front of him, stammering in response, "Yes, that's right." But in his head, he thought, did this person just take down that bear? Who is she? The other party introduced herself. "I am Arides, a traveling mage." Ian said in awe, "A mage? Those are powerful entities that appear on the battlefield, wielding exquisite skills and devastating destructive power. Why would someone like that be in a remote town like this?" Arides spoke up, "I'm looking for a black-haired boy who lives in this town. Is there anyone else with black hair besides you?" Ian immediately replied, "No, it's just me." She looked him up and down and said, "Well, Then it looks like I found the right person. Ian felt a bit skeptical. He looked at her and asked back, me? At this moment, Erides recalled what someone had told her before. Look for a black-haired boy in the Feldenberg territory. If you take him as your disciple, good things will happen. And then she thought to herself, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and awe. Such a lively and adorable vibe. So all I need to do is take this kid as my disciple. Thinking this, Erides laughed out loud and said, seriously, that sly space mage. Ian frowned and thought, I heard mages are all terrifying eccentrics, but this person is actually very kind. The magic from earlier was truly terrifying. She wiped out that bear with a single blow. Seeing this, he directly questioned Erides, Mage, may I ask you something? She replied, what is it? He asked about the magic she had used on the bear just now. Erides stepped closer to him. She pondered for a moment and then said excitedly, it seems you have an interest in magic. He replied, I used to hear that magic was terrifying, but seeing it with my own eyes, it's truly wonderful. Erides quickly responded, it's nothing special. You can do it easily too as long as you learn. After all, anyone can master magic. Hearing this, Ian's cheeks gradually flushed red. He muttered bashfully, if anyone can, then can I learn magic too? Erides flashed a bright smile, looked straight into Ian's eyes, then reached out to pat his head and said, of course, as long as you meet a good master. It's entirely possible. You can become a mage too, Ian. If you want, I can teach you magic. As she spoke, Erides extended her hand toward Ian. Well, do you want to become my disciple? Ian looked at the person in front of him, unable to help but fall deep into thought. This could be the chance to change my life. Ian looked at the person in front of him, unable to help but fall deep into thought. This could be the chance to change my life. He decisively grabbed Erides' hand and stated clearly, yes, please guide me. The next day, in the morning at Ian's village, a massive book suddenly slammed down right onto the table in front of Ian. Erides reminded him in a loud voice, the very fundamentals of magic lie within the Maronius language. Before that, Raven had told both Erides and Ian, I understand, be careful, and have a safe trip. Even the Lord nodded in approval. All right, think about it. Erides let out a sigh of relief and exclaimed, it was so hard to get permission from your parents and the Lord. You must put in your absolute best effort. Ian slammed his hand down on the table, declaring firmly, I'm ready. She asked him one more time, all right, shall we begin? He immediately replied, yes. Maronius language 1% in progress. Maronius language 27% in progress. At this stage, Ian had begun to babble out a few words. Maronius language 53% in progress. By then, Ian had read quite a few books. He was also gradually pronouncing the language much more fluently than before. Later, the system announced Maronius language 99% in progress. And finally, Maronius language 100% completed, allowing fluent mastery of the official magic language of the Archmage. 7 years later, Ian gently closed the book. Erides stood to the side, smiling as she told him, that concludes the theoretical part. Let's move on to the next step. Ian had grown up quite a bit by now. He smiled back at her and replied, yes. Ian Erides Raven, novice mage, magic language skill, capable of using the magic language. A while later, in a place of majestic mountains surrounded by endless clouds, Ian suddenly found himself free-falling from the sky. He kept screaming his lungs out, roaring at the top of his voice, hey master, you're moving way too fast. For the past 6 years, I've only been learning the Maronius language. Under the blazing sun of a summer afternoon, Ian's youthful voice echoed through the air, help me. Seeing this, Erides shouted out to instruct him, listen to the sound. Ian stammered out a sound. He looked around and thought to himself, what am I supposed to be listening to in a place like this? All I can hear is the sound of the wind. Suddenly, he heard a few voices whispering in his ear, he's a human, look, he's flying. He's just like us, right? Ian thought in awe that this was the Maronius language. The system then popped up showing that a new skill had been acquired. Wind magic, capable of using wind magic. A few hours later, Ian's voice rang out, full of curiosity, the mysteries of nature. Erides chuckled softly and replied, exactly, though you look pretty ridiculous right now. He answered helplessly, yeah, go ahead and laugh all you want. Erides continued to instruct him. Mages borrow power by communicating with the mysteries of nature. That is what magic is. Ian muttered with a serious face, magic. And now, Arides shouted loudly. Now that you can hear the voice of the wind, next you must listen to another mysterious voice. Ian excitedly responded to her. Yes, leave it to me. Arides shouted. First up is water magic. In the blink of an eye, Ian was thrown straight into the sea. He had to flounder around in the water while a scolding voice rang in his ears. You're dirtying the water. Get the hell out. He really wanted to talk back, but couldn't form actual words, only making sounds. A silent exchange. Once that was done, Arides moved on to the next lesson. Next up is ice magic. In the freezing weather, snow fell continuously. Ian sat shivering inside a barrel, while a voice whispered in his ear, Human, your body is getting cold. As soon as he conquered the next power, Arides praised Ian. Not bad, Ian, you grasped them fast. You don't even have the energy left to talk back. Then, she snapped her fingers and shouted, All right. Next up is, out of nowhere, a massive blaze erupted right before Ian's eyes. He cried out in panic, Master! The flame noticed him and shouted in surprise. What's this? Is that a human here? I wonder if it's okay to burn him to a crisp. Hearing that, Ian shrieked in absolute terror. Help! In a flash, the scene shifted to the inside of a dark cave. Holding a torch in his hand, Ian let out a heavy sigh and complained, Earth magic, is this the last one? The cave then spoke up. Therefore, that which flows cannot be called flowing just because it doesn't move. Ian didn't seem to get it, saying dejectedly, What is it even talking about? What kind of cosmic theory is that? Maybe I just don't have a talent for earth magic, or I need to rack up more experience from other training sessions. Suddenly, Ian spotted the system interface and gasped in surprise. Oh, it's the skill menu. On it, a prompt appeared granting bonus skill points, which could be used to increase magic proficiency. Available points, 100. Ian flashed a sly grin. He muttered, As expected, I really am a cheat player in this world. Well then, let's just max out earth magic, since I have absolutely no clue what it's saying anyway. Instantly, a flash of light burst from the system right in front of Ian. The cave spoke up. Tiny human, lava is flowing beneath this place. Be careful. If an earthquake occurs, it will erupt outward. Ian said softly, So this is earth magic. All right, I've got to get out of here quick and let Master know that I've heard the voice of the earth. Fire ignited, and in an instant, the torch in Ian's hand flared up brightly. However, at that exact moment, another voice rang out, catching his attention. I hate the light. Ian looked around in a panic and shouted, Who's there? Is it the earth? The voice replied to him, No, I am the darkness. At night, the moon had reached its peak, and the clouds drifted lazily across the sky. Arides sat in front of the cave entrance, deeply lost in thought, telling herself she had to attend the upcoming Fire Mage conference. Suddenly, Ian dashed out from inside the cave, shouting at the top of his lungs as he ran, Master! Arides looked him over, leaped down from the rocky ledge, and exclaimed, You succeeded. Ian replied politely, Yes, and I even learned dark magic from the shadows too. Arides froze in shock for a second. What? She thought to herself, Did you just say you heard the voice of that incredibly cowardly darkness? Ian noticed that she was just staring at him without saying another word, so he hastily asked, Master, are you okay? Arides replied, Ian, yes, it's time for us to head down the mountain. Ian nodded and replied, Yes, where are we going? However, Arides countered, That's not what I meant. What I mean is, we should part ways here. Go to Chronolic and join the Time and Space Mage Conference. If you're truly destined to master time and space magic, you will meet a Time and Space Mage there. Ian asked in confusion why it was suddenly time and space magic out of nowhere. Even so, Arides just laughed out loud and patted his head without explaining. She smiled, thinking to herself that Ian has a natural gift for the mystical. If her intuition was right, Ian could definitely master the power of time as well. Well then, let's meet again in 3 years in Dranham. A few days later, vibrant calls echoed through a certain village during the late afternoon. A few days later, vibrant calls echoed through a certain village during the late afternoon. Ian moved through the bustling crowd, deep in thought as he walked. The Time and Space Mage Conference. She really is an unpredictable person. Everything happens so sudden. Right in front of him, a man shouted out to advertise, Anyone heading north, let me tag along. Ian thought to himself, She did mention that the Time and Space Mage Conference is being held in the north. Since I'm free anyway, I might as well head over there and check it out for now. Ian and a group of people sat gathered around a campfire to rest. Reek, standing next to him with a face full of curiosity, turned his head to look over. "Hey kid, is this your first time heading north?" Reek, standing next to him with a face full of curiosity, turned his head to look over. "Hey kid, is this your first time heading north?" Ian thought of that phantom dragon image and spoke up quizzically, "Dragon Mountain." Ian thought of that phantom dragon image and spoke up quizzically, "Dragon Mountain." Afterward, Reek put his arm around Ian's shoulder in a friendly manner and probed, "Do you know how to fight? Or at least, can you run fast?" He frowned with an awkward expression. "I'm not too confident about either." Why did he suddenly become overly friendly? Hearing that, the old man immediately pulled his hand back and questioned him thoroughly with an annoyed look. "What? Seriously? How useless. What's your profession anyway?" Ian scratched his head, replying bashfully, "I'm a mage." Reek jumped up with a look of pure terror on his face, backing away to a safe distance. "A mage, did you say?" He couldn't believe it, quickly double-checking. "Are you for real?" He pursed his lips slightly and confirmed, "Yes." Lucy, startled, casting a scanning glance sideways to check out the situation. Calf, holding a cup of water in his hand, gasped in shock, "A mage." Ogin also shouted out with a face full of astonishment. Him, seeing that, Ian asked back in confusion, "Is there a problem?" In his mind, he couldn't help but think, "What's up with this atmosphere?" Reek quickly snatched the cup from Ian's hand, trying to please him by saying, "It's nothing here. Let me go get you some more." He widened his eyes, looking over and stammering, "No, I'm good." Ian blankly watched the man's retreating figure as he bolted off, clutching the cup, and called out, "Hey." He suddenly stiffened when he heard a mocking scoff from behind him. "That thing is a mage?" Ogin let out a cold laugh, finding it utterly ridiculous. Caleb also laughed out loud in agreement. "He looks so weak, though." Rian smirked, raising a hand to make a scene. "If that's the case, then every stray dog around here is a mage too." Ian cast his eyes over at the guy in confusion. What is wrong with that bunch? Right after that, Lucy walked up to his side and spoke softly, "Hey." She raised her hand and whispered quietly, "If you really are a mage, you should teach them a lesson to shut them up." Hearing this, Ian frowned in confusion. "Teach them a lesson?" Lucy immediately sat down beside him to explain, "It doesn't matter if you're a mage or whatever, because mercenaries will look down on anyone who seems gentle." She glanced over toward Owen's group and added, "So you have to show off your strength to scare them a bit." Lucy looked up at him, giving a sincere reminder, "Once you do that, if anything happens, they'll actually back you up and protect you." Hearing this, Ian was taken aback and stared blankly at her without saying a word. After a moment, he cast his eyes forward, lost in thought. "She's right, but how should I go about it? I've never really lost my temper before." Nearby, Diane, with a face full of disdain, spat right into the bowl he had just received. Next, he reached out and gently used a leaf to wipe around the rim of the bowl. Seeing this scene, Ian got so angry that the veins popped on his forehead. Did he just spit onto my plate? Holding his bowl, he felt the ground beneath his feet shaking and shouted in panic, "What's going on? Is it an earthquake?" Suddenly, he blankly raised his head to look over when Ian's voice rang out. With a dark, menacing expression clouding his face, Ian stood straight in front of Den, interrogating him word by word. "How dare you spit on my plate?" Terrified, the man couldn't help but tremble all over. "I am sorry," he stammered, dropping to his knees on the ground, not daring to lift his head as he begged. "I'm sorry, Lord Mage." Ian rolled his eyes in pure anger upon hearing the guy's explanation. "I just thought I should clean the plate." He glared with wide eyes, putting his hands on his hips and shouting, "Then you should wash it with water." Hearing that, Dee froze for a moment and asked back in a low voice, "But isn't water dirty?" Ian was startled and asked back in utter shock, "What did you say?" Frowning as he thought of those rivers, the man spoke up, explaining that they were full of mud, clay, and even parasites. "How could I possibly use water to wash a plate?" Hearing that, his jaw dropped, completely losing his color in shock when they added that spit was actually way more hygienic. Hearing that, his jaw dropped, completely losing his color in shock when they added that spit was actually way more hygienic. Looking at the blank expressions on the crowd's faces, he thought to himself, "I seriously can't believe this." His whole body went rigid, standing there totally frozen. Medieval hygiene standards really are something else. Lucy cautiously walked up to his side, gently tapping Ian as she called out, "Lord Mage." Next, his lips curled into a slight smirk as he quickly chanted an incantation, streams of bright red light rapidly shooting into the nearby campfire. Watching the flames suddenly shoot straight into the sky, the crowd gasped in surprise and looked over. The whole group stared blankly at the fire, letting out sounds of disbelief. What the? Nearby, Lucy also stared wide-eyed toward the blazing fire. Ian remained motionless, standing right in his tracks as he commanded, "Go fetch me some water right now." Then, unable to take it anymore, he threw his arms up into the air and roared, "You filthy medieval peasants!" Dan immediately spun around and bolted, shouting, "I have no idea what's going on, but he looks like he's completely snapped." Then, unable to take it anymore, he threw his arms up into the air and roared, "You filthy medieval peasants!" Dan immediately spun around and bolted, shouting, "I have no idea what's going on, but he looks like he's completely snapped." Owen led the group forward, asking around, "Did Kathy really head this way?" Sepp, standing beside him, smiled and said, "There's no mistake." With a face full of smiles, he imagined the two of them being together. "Great, this time I'll keep Kathy all to myself." Owen lifted his head, spotting a dark figure in the distance, and shouted at the top of his lungs. Seeing her, his face flushed red as he raised a hand and called out, "Hey, it's getting dark, come with me." Immediately after, his brows furrowed tightly as he looked over. Seeing a stranger carrying Lucy over his shoulder, he let out a sharp gasp. Owen immediately barked out, "What the hell? Who are you guys?" Suddenly, an arrow flew from the opposite side, piercing straight through the chest of Caleb, standing right next to him. Seeing him collapse, Ogen cursed in a fury, "You bastards! How dare you do that to our people?" He drew his sword and led the men behind him as they charged in to kill them. Seeing this, the masked man scowled in disdain and muttered, "This weak bunch doesn't look like much at all." All of a sudden, Lucy, who was slung over his shoulder, snapped her eyes open. Then she bit down hard on the masked man's shoulder, making him howl in pain. The masked man let go and slammed Lucy hard onto the ground, clutching his wound tight. Her whole body trembling, she immediately got up and quickly scrambled away. Her whole body trembling, she immediately got up and quickly scrambled away. Inside the tent, Ian rested his head on his forearm, deeply lost in thought. His brows were tightly knit as his mouth kept muttering over and over, "Spit is absolutely out of the question." Suddenly Ian bolted upright in shock when a voice called out, "Human, it's a human is coming. Wake up, hurry." Ian sat still on the bed, his face full of confusion. What is this? Sensing this aura, he glanced over as a calling voice echoed from outside. Lord Mage. Reek, looking frantic, pulled back the tent curtain and shouted, "We've got trouble." At night, the bright full moon illuminated the entire forest. As Ian stepped out of the tent, he saw the crowd engaged in a fierce battle. The masked man swung his blade, easily taking down an opposing soldier. Stomping his foot onto the corpse, he barked out a loud order, "I don't care, just kill them all." The masked man raised his sword high, looking at the surrounding crowd as he added, "Find that woman." Lucy tightly gripped the strap of her bag, hiding behind a nearby tree trunk. Terrified, she clutched her head, crouching down anxiously. "What am I supposed to do? At this rate, I'm going to get caught." Suddenly, Lucy gasped as she felt the tip of a blade pointing straight at her head. The towering Victor looked down, saying coldly, "So here you are." His lips curled into a vicious smirk as he bellowed, "Get up right now, or I'll chop your hand off." Lucy's entire face went pale, her whole body shaking with fear. "It's over." Right after that, seeing that she wasn't moving, Victor raised his sword high into the air. But then his eyes widened, staring behind her in utter shock. A powerful blast of energy surged from afar, knocking Victor flying backward. Not far away, Ian stood with his hand raised, surrounded by remnants of magic that had yet to fade. Lucy immediately looked up at him. Ian quickly reached out, grabbed her hand, and pulled her to her feet. Flashing a gentle smile, he looked over and softly reminded her, "Stay close and follow me." Lucy stared over in a daze, pursing her lips without saying a word. A group of people lined up in a single file, each putting their hands on the shoulders of the person ahead of them. Reek, at the very back of the line, raised an arm and shouted, "The Lord Mage is ready." Reek, at the very back of the line, raised an arm and shouted, "The Lord Mage is ready." His lips moved slightly as he began to chant, "Oh darkness." His lips moved slightly as he began to chant, "Oh darkness." Ian raised a hand as streams of dark energy and blue light rapidly gathered together. Watching the dark mist materialize beside him, someone cried out in shock. What on earth is this? The whole place is being swallowed by darkness. Shrill screams erupted. I can't see a damn thing. Crap. Light the torches, hurry. Torches were quickly lit one after another. In that pitch-black darkness, the shouting and yelling continued. It's so hot here, is that you? Then it's this way. I told you it wasn't. In the dark, Ian led Reek's group forward through the shadows. Good. If we just keep moving like this. Suddenly, a system prompt popped up. Skill activated, casting shadow sight, capable of seeing right through the dark. Out of nowhere, a loud shout echoed through the darkness. On, holding a torch, appeared right behind Reek, announcing loudly, over here. He immediately raised his sword high. Where do you think you're running off to? Reek, looking utterly terrified, shook like a leaf. Spare me. Ian, standing in front, turned his head back, his eyes flashing with a blue light. Fire burn. Along with a roaring sound, the flames from the torch flared up, completely engulfing Aeon. Within the blink of an eye, he collapsed to the ground, his body covered in severe burns. The rest of the crowd froze in their tracks at the sight, completely paralyzed with shock. Ian gritted his teeth, staring fixedly over there. This should be enough to scare them off. Right after that, panic cries rang out. It's a mage. There's a mage over there. Seeing this, the masked man raised his sword and took the lead, charging forward. Everyone charge. Suddenly, Ian looked to the side with a face full of terror. A creature resembling a draker, its eyes glowing red, lunged from the right with its jaws wide open. Ian's group froze in their tracks, not daring to make a move. Andrian also stood there paralyzed with fear, not daring to budge a single inch. Ian also gasped, staring over blankly. What on earth is... Looking at the glowing eyes of the draker, he thought, a drake. The masked man watched Ian's fresh blood drip from its mouth, letting out a groan. Immediately after, he spun around and bolted. Reek pointed a trembling hand over there, his voice shaking. Lord Mage, there's a dragon. Ian cast his eyes toward the draker, lamenting in his heart. This is bad. Ian cast his eyes toward the draker, lamenting in his heart. This is bad. The system's voice rang out. You have witnessed the primal mystery. Ian looked at the notification box in front of him, letting out a confused sound. The notification screen continued to display. Acquired summoning skill, capable of communicating with and summoning mystical beings. Ian looked at the draker before him, questioning. Summoning magic? His brows knit together as he hypothesized. Could it be that even that drake? Ian thought back on his past experiences, wondering if it was just like the mystical forces he had encountered before. He clenched his trembling fist tightly. If that's the case, hearing Ian's calling voice, the draker tilted its head slightly. Oh, Drake. Reek and the others also stared at him in pure terror. Lord Mage. The draker opened its maw wide, its eyes narrowing slightly as it stared intently at Ian. With a completely calm face, he kept reassuring himself. It's fine. I can do this. Streams of blue light flashed from Ian's body, because the mystical had never betrayed him. He thwacked his hand against his chest and yelled, I am. Right after, Ian pointed a finger at the draker, adding, your friend. Right after, Ian pointed a finger at the draker, adding, your friend. Right after, Ian pointed a finger at the draker, adding, your friend. Dew looked over anxiously, whispering under his breath, I wonder what it's saying. Reek frowned, putting a finger to his lips as a warning. Quiet. The Lord Mage is listening. Ian stared intently at the draker in front of him without moving an inch, but on the inside, he was frantically clutching his head and groaning. What the hell is it even saying? Ultimately, Ian could only steel his resolve. No choice left. Let's use points to level up the skill. He gently tapped the system screen, deciding to dump all his points into summoning. Immediately after, a notification prompt popped up. Summoning proficiency has increased. The draker's deep, low voice echoed. Ian's eyes widened in astonishment. I can hear it. He immediately looked up and called out, Lord Drake. It let out a sudden roar. Then the draker opened its maw wide and bellowed, nearly blowing Ian's group away. If you've got something to say, spit it out. The corner of his mouth twitched into a slight smirk as he thought. As expected, this method works. Right after, Ian raised his hand and lightly bit his fingernail. After a moment, his voice rang out as he followed up, Lord Drake, I have no intention of fighting you. Hearing this, the draker scoffed in disdain. A tiny human wants to fight me? Ridiculous. Ian smoothly followed up without missing a beat. Exactly, we would definitely get wiped out in the blink of an eye. To an entity like you, Lord Drake, we aren't even worth your trouble. It asked back suspiciously. Are you asking me to spare your lives? Reek asked anxiously from behind. Is it telepathy? Dew's face also turned completely pale, not sure. Lucy bit her lip nervously, staring over toward them. Precisely, I can't even be bothered to kill you guys. Hearing these words, Ian couldn't hide his delight. All right, looks like we're good. But he suddenly froze as it cut him off. However, the Draker's eyes flashed with a white light as it roared. Right now, I am in an extremely foul mood. Reek's whole body shook as he looked up and shouted, Lord Mage. Seeing this, Ian also gritted his teeth and cursed inwardly. Damn it. What am I supposed to do now? Ian looked at the Draker, thinking to himself. So he's telling me to get lost out of his sight. No choice then, I'll just have to deal with it directly. Right after that, he looked toward it and shouted, Drake. Ian stood his ground, extending a hand forward as he inquired, Why is your mood so terrible? The Draker asked back with utter contempt. Why should I discuss that with a mere human? It listened calmly as his voice echoed back. I just thought that maybe I could be of some help. The Draker leaned in closer, extending its claws forward. How arrogant! What could a tiny human possibly accomplish? Right after that, Ian lowered his head and let out a resounding roar. Streams of energy from the sky and the surrounding rivers and lakes rapidly surged upward. Feeling the massive gathering of energy, Lucy's group behind him gasped in absolute awe. The Draker also noticed the magic heavy in the air, letting out a questioning grunt. On the other side, strands of white magic swirled all around Ian. Seeing this, it opened its maw wide, letting out an exclamation that sounded rather intrigued. Ian opened his eyes to look at the swirling lights around him, replying with a smile, I am but a humble mage searching for the mysteries of the world, so I hope I can offer my meager strength to assist you. Ian opened his eyes to look at the swirling lights around him, replying with a smile, I am but a humble mage searching for the mysteries of the world, so I hope I can offer my meager strength to assist. After a long pause, its voice rang out in agreement. Very well, from this moment on, we negotiate. Inside the quiet forest, Ian looked at the Draker across from him and thought, his killing intent is completely gone. He raised a hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead, letting out a silent sigh of relief. At least the immediate danger is avoided. Now it's time to show what I can do. Ian closed his eyes, rubbing his chin as he pondered. It's not like I'm completely helpless anyway, but I can't let him lead me by the nose with crazy demands either. Suddenly, his eyes snapped wide open, startled as he recalled that inquiring voice. Do you understand? Ian. Arides stood with one hand on her hip, gently instructing, you cannot use magic without communicating with the mystical. Ian tilted his head in confusion as she spoke further. Therefore, the relationship you build with them is absolutely crucial. Arides' voice added, are they friends or are they subordinates? Every mystical being has a distinct personality. For a mage, the core requirement is to understand and empathize with the emotions of the mystical. Snapping back to reality, the corner of Ian's mouth twitched into a small smirk. Right, for a mage, the most important thing is communication tactics. All right, let's see how I handle this Drake. He glanced sideways under his breath. Manifest skill window. Immediately after, Ian let out a surprised gasp upon seeing the advanced summoning skill prompt by Demon. Contradicting his calm exterior, his heart was racing with excitement. This is the one. Ian fixed his eyes on the screen to read it through. On the screen were the words, no matter what, just give them extremely strong liquor. The larger the body, the heavier the alcohol content needs to be. He couldn't help but wonder, what? Alcohol. Next, the text on the screen continued to flash. Seeing this, Ian thought tensely. The screen popped up with another tip. Flatter them to the absolute maximum. He froze right in his tracks, asking blankly, what the hell is this? Ian slumped onto the ground, thinking in despair. This is bad. A loner like me will absolutely never pull this off. Sensing this, the Draker wondered in confusion. What is a loner? He immediately lifted his head, filled with determination. No. First I have to win over the Drake's favor. Once I do that, there'll be a breakthrough. Seeing Ian hesitate, the Draker took the initiative to ask, what is it? With a face full of sincerity, he spoke up, I have prepared a gift for you. Lord Drake, May I present it to you? It looked down from above. A gift? Fine, bring it here. Without turning his head, Ian shouted out loudly, Reek! The old man startled, immediately replying, Yes. He turned his head back, urging loudly, Hurry to the wagon and bring over the strongest liquor we have, snap to it. Just a moment later, a lineup of hard liquors in various colors was laid out. The Draker lowered its head to look down, speaking up with utter dissatisfaction. What a stingy gift. Ian closed his eyes, softly adding, In the human world, the smaller the quantity, the more expensive it is. In his mind, he couldn't help but raise a fist. What are you even complaining about? Right after that, he quickly poured a glass of liquor into a large cup. Holding the newly poured cup of liquor, Ian held it up toward the Draker across from him. Here, smelling the rising scent of alcohol, it used its claw to cover its snout. What is this smell? The Draker looked down from above, emitting an intense pressure as it questioned. Mage, you're not planning to pull a fast one, are you? Seeing this, Ian offered a gentle smile. Not at all. In that case, I'll drink first to prove it. He raised the cup of liquor in his hand, then tilted his head back and drained it completely. Reek's group watched from behind with bated breath. After finishing it, Ian wiped the corner of his mouth with his hand and smiled, saying, See? Completely fine. He couldn't help but dry heave inwardly, thinking this stuff is seriously strong. The Draker pinched its snout with two claws. I see. The scent is quite pungent, but it lowered its head toward the cup as Ian's voice echoed in its ears. Please try a sip. I believe you'll be satisfied. The Draker used its claw to gently lift the cup, inspecting it closely, then stuck out its tongue to take a tentative lick. Julian watched with a face full of anxiety, clasping her hands together in silent prayer. On the other side, the Draker gulped down the entire cup, its face flushing red. Ian looked across at it and inquired, How is it? Its voice echoed back in response, It's not exactly delicious. Hearing the Draker's next words, his eyes widened, but for some reason, it's highly addictive. Ian, with a joyful expression, picked up another bottle of liquor. Please have some more. It gets even better from here. The Draker asked back unsurely, Is that so? Inside the dark night, the bright full moon continued to illuminate the entire forest. The Draker, its face completely flushed, held up the cup it had just finished. Beside it, Ian used a handkerchief to wipe the sweat from his forehead, listening to it shout loudly. You call this liquid liquor? I love it. Looking at the pile of empty wooden barrels in front of him, he felt anxious. He is downed over 7 barrels and still hasn't passed out. With a completely dumbfounded face, Ian gave a big thumbs up. This guy's tolerance is insane, truly impressive. He lowered his head and took a gentle sip of the liquor in his hand. I was planning to escape while he was asleep, but it looks like that's a no-go. Suddenly, Ian's eyes widened when he heard the Draker ask, Human, you asked me something earlier, didn't you? It lowered its head, calling out calmly, Why, my mood is terrible. He immediately chimed in, Yes. Ian looked at the Draker's teary eyes, taken aback. Why did he suddenly get so emotional? Through the darkness, its sorrowful voice echoed. My nest is in a bad location, and it's even more cramped compared to the others. The Draker threw its head back and wept loudly. Even so, she still said it was a comfortable place. Ian turned to stone on the spot, looking over with a judging gaze. Is that right? In his heart, he wondered, he has a lover? With a face like that, it lowered its head, adding in a low voice, though it was unclear since when. The Draker's heartbroken voice continued to echo, startling him. She started getting mocked by the others. Its entire body trembled, clenching its teeth tightly. Just for being with someone like me, I feel incredibly guilty toward her. The Draker's eyes flashed with a golden light as it roared toward the sky. So, I was the one who broke it off. On the other side, Reek's sleeping group was also startled awake. What was that? The Draker threw its head back, letting out continuous wails. The 3 members of Reek's group simultaneously clasped their hands together and collapsed to the ground. Ian looked up at it, falling deep into thought. His feelings for the one he loves are no different from a human's. I actually feel a bit sorry for him. He rubbed his chin, calculating, wait if I leverage this. Hearing Ian's call, the Draker looked over with a face full of tears. Drake. He pushed off his knees to stand up. I will use magic to help you remodel your nest. It startled, looking back as a question. What? You will. The corner of Ian's mouth turned up slightly into a smile as he followed up. Yes, but in return. With both hands on his hips and a bright smile across his face, he said, Could you grant me one request? The next morning, Daylight gradually illuminated the towering cliffside. Ian stood up straight, his face completely calm. Reek was leaning against the back of the wagon, mumbled talking in his sleep. Yeah, I miss her too. Ian placed a finger on his forehead. Sorry. While fast asleep, Reek puckered his lips and shouted out loud. Seeing this, Ian felt incredibly annoyed, veins nearly popping on his forehead. Ian leaned in close and said coldly, "If you don't wake up, I'm going to snap your finger." Reek looked utterly terrified when he saw Ian staring down at him with a dead serious expression. He immediately scrambled backward a bit in a panic, letting out a loud shriek. The wagon lost its balance, sending Reek and the others on board tumbling down. He and the others immediately sat up and looked over. Reek looked over, unable to hide his suspicion. "Mage, what on earth is going on?" Ian followed up with a perfectly calm face. "I vaguely remember Drake letting out a roar." Hearing this, Reek chimed in, and then everyone passed out. Ian angrily cursed under his breath. "Damn it, I shouldn't have picked them up." Lucy looked over and asked anxiously, "Has Drake gone back to his nest?" Ian spoke up to deny it. "No, he's waiting up there." Reek shuddered and tightly hugged Julian next to him. "Is he waiting to eat us?" Ian replied with a dead serious face. "No." Ian looked down at the crowd. "He's waiting for me. I made a deal with him on the condition that I would help you guys." Lucy frowned, repeating uncertainly, "Deal." Reek cried out, deeply moved. "The mage is sacrificing himself for us." Ian frowned and turned away. Maybe I did something unnecessary. He couldn't help but think back to last night's scene. He had told the creature to let these people go, and in exchange he would fix its nest. In the back, Reek pointed a finger straight up. "The great mage Raven Arides Ian." Julian also shouted at the top of his lungs, "Raven Arides Ian." Startled by the chanting voices, Ian turned his head back. "What is this?" Right after that, a song praising the super cool master Ian burst out. "Defeat Drake, roar at it, beat it down." The voices of Reek's trio kept ringing out. "So cool. Tell Drake off. Awesome, curse him out," they shouted excitedly. And finally, "You made Drake submit." Tears streaming down their faces, Reek's trio raised their fists and shouted, "Submit." He immediately stepped forward and yelled out loud, "From this day on, we live and die with the mage. We will protect you with our lives." Andrian right behind him immediately piped up loudly, "Amen." Ian stared blankly at them, having absolutely no idea what they were talking about. He pointed a hand at the three of them and instructed, "Be ready to move out before I get back. Don't leave without me." Reek placed a hand over his heart, reassuring him, "Don't worry. We are of one mind and strength." Ian spoke up blankly, "All right." Seeing Ian leave, he immediately turned around to give orders. "All right, first let's check the mercenary headcount." Lucy frowned thoughtfully, glancing toward the direction Ian had just left. Then she turned around and walked deep into the forest. Inside a narrow cliffside, the Drake's voice echoed an introduction. "This is my nest." Ian looked around the cave, letting out a gasp of dismay. Seeing that, the Drake roared angrily. "What's with that reaction? It's too late for regrets now." Ian hurriedly raised his hands to deny it. "I didn't mean it like that. I'm just taking a look around." Ian looked all around with a deeply grimacing face. He was already sleepy, and using the Moronius language made him even more exhausted. His face was full of fatigue as he let out a heavy sigh. "Let's wrap this up quickly so I can get some rest." Just pushing those protruding rocks inward to smooth out the walls should make it much more spacious. Right after that, Ian closed his eyes, silently feeling the fluctuations of energy. After a moment, his lips moved slightly as he chanted the incantation. "Oh, Earth." The Earth energy manifested and questioned, "Is it you again?" "Human." Ian looked forward with a serious face. "I have a request." Her voice rang out in refusal. "I'm not interested. I'm busy." Seeing that, he sighed inwardly. She really was very annoyed with him. Seeing Ian open his eyes, the Drake immediately asked, "How did it go?" Ian crossed his arms and replied, "The Earth refuses to speak with me. I'll try again when she's in a better mood." Ian's eyebrows knitted tightly together. "I'll probably just get rejected again." Hearing that, the Drake could only accept it. "If the Earth has rejected you, then there's nothing we can do." Startled, Ian looked over, unable to hide the surprise on his face. The Drake lowered its head in deep disappointment. "Simply put, she is not my soulmate. Thank you for trying your best for someone like me." Ian couldn't help but want to comfort him. The Drake looked straight ahead and inquired, "What is your mage name?" Ian's voice rang out in response. Raven, Arides, Ian. The drake extended a claw and spoke up. I'm the long-tailed drake. Let's be friends from now on. Ian reached out and lightly grasped its claw, calling out, Drake. The two shook hands firmly, silently looking at one another. A notification popped up on the screen. New skill acquired. Drake summoning magic. You can call upon your drake friend for aid. If it is a friend's request, he will gladly answer. Ian looked at the notification gloomily. I've got the skill, but to think I couldn't do anything for my friend. Suddenly, the drake's voice rang out, causing Ian to look over. He gestured with his arm, revealing a massive hoard of treasure behind him. To celebrate us becoming friends. I'm gifting this to you. Pick as much as you like. Looking at the piled-up gold and silver, Ian thought to himself, just as Master said, dragons love collecting treasure. It seems the relatives of the dragon race are no different. Ian reached down and picked up a sparkling gemstone. Too bad. If the earth saw these stones, she'd probably listen to me right away. Suddenly, he froze, rooted to the spot. Ian gasped as it clicked. Wait, if I use this the right way. He immediately turned his head to ask, Drake, can I draw a few lines on the ground? He looked back at Ian with a confused face and asked, Draw? After a long while, Ian quietly stared at the gemstone resting in the center of the magic circle. He bit his lips slightly, thinking to himself, I forgot the way Master taught me. Ian looked at the light radiating from the magic circle. If the mystic is throwing a tantrum, all you have to do is offer a gift through the magic circle. The drake looked over with total confusion. What are you planning to do? Hearing this, Ian smiled and replied, Just watch and see. Ian happily looked up and shouted, Oh, Earth! A voice echoed through the space in response. What is it, young human? Ian immediately shouted at the top of his lungs. Shift the rocks to flatten the walls. A blinding light erupted from the stone, spreading everywhere along with a pale blue glow. Lines of incantations continuously manifest. The cliff walls began to crack, then quickly receded. Sunlight from the outside poured into the interior through the newly formed gaps. Startled, the drake felt the sunlight shining inside from the outside. His eyes instantly went wide in sheer disbelief. This is my nest. Ian looked at the gorgeously decorated cave in front of him and added, It's my gift to you. The drake cried out with sparkling eyes, unable to believe it. Ian bowed his head with a proud face. It looked like the drake was about to cry from pure emotion. He looked at the beautiful cave and yelled, It's so spacious, so beautiful. The drake threw his head back and took a deep breath. And it smells good, too. He glanced to the side and asked, Ian, did you create this scent with magic as well? Ian immediately spoke up to deny it. No. The drake gripped Ian's hand tightly with his claw and shouted, Thank you, my friend. He lifted Ian up in the air, his face filled with pure joy. With this, I have nothing to be ashamed of in front of her anymore. Even if hatchlings are born, they'll be safe here. Ian cried out in surprise. I didn't even plan for that far ahead. Ian said with a helpless look. Well, as long as you like it, that's what matters. After a moment, his feet finally touched the ground. Hey! Ian blankly touched his ear, thinking, What is this? He hurriedly covered his mouth in confusion. Ian looked at the drake's worried face, wondering why. The drake screamed in terror. Hey, are you okay? Is that blood? Seeing Ian collapse to the ground and pass out, the drake yelled, Ian! The drake held Ian tightly in utter panic. Buddy, wake up! Seeing Ian's face turn a terrifying shade of pale, he panicked even more. Holy crap! What on earth am I supposed to do? Right at that moment, a voice echoed from afar. Mage! Lucy came running in a hurry. The moment he saw her, the drake's eyes instantly went wide with hostility. She also looked up in fear. Lucy quickly slammed on the brakes, her boots dragging across the ground. He gently laid Ian down on the ground, then turned back to Lucy, baring his fangs and growling threateningly. Lucy was trembling so hard her voice cracked a bit, but she still tried to stay calm, raising her hands to explain. Wait, Drake, listen to me. I'm Ian's friend, so please don't eat me, okay? The drake tilted its head in confusion. Ian, friend. Right at that moment, Ian stirred slightly beside them, letting out a small groan. Both of them instantly snapped their heads to look at him. His eyes were still tightly shut, his face contorted in pain. The sky gradually turned dark, and the small room was lit only by the flickering light of a candle. Ian finally woke up slowly. He groggily waved his hand around, subconsciously repeating, What time is it? Where's my phone? Ian's hand suddenly brushed against something soft next to him. Still not opening his eyes, his foggy mind thought, why is my phone so soft? Did the material turn into gummy candy? His fingers instinctively gave it another light squeeze as he thought to himself, it's really soft, feels just like a cat's paw. Right then, Lucy's voice rang out beside him. You're awake? Ian's eyes snapped open. He sat bolt upright, stammering in utter panic. Kathy, why are you here? Am I still dreaming? The dream felt like I was recording a video with my phone. Looking worried, Lucy immediately advised, lie down a bit more. Your head is still spinning. Sure enough, in the very next second, a wave of severe dizziness hit Ian, causing him to lightly clutch his head. She quickly reached a hand out to check on him. Are you okay? Don't get up so suddenly. He narrowed his eyes and began to reminisce. Oh right, I passed out. I overexerted my summoning tear, trying to force a connection with Drake. Thinking of that, Ian slowly looked up at Lucy, then immediately pulled his hood down to cover most of his face, feeling anxious inside. Damn it, did she see everything? This is so embarrassing, I want to disappear. After calming down, he looked around before asking, where is Drake? She hesitated slightly before answering. He suddenly left. Ian let out a sigh, speculating in his head. Did that guy go look for her? He scratched his head awkwardly. Sorry for causing trouble. Lucy looked at him gently and shook her head. Don't worry about it, I'm fine. Ian was silent for a few seconds, then remembered something else. By the way, how did you get in here? Proper navigation past Drake is supposed to be incredibly difficult, isn't it? She recounted the whole thing seriously. I just told him I was your friend, as if unable to believe it. He repeated, how? Immoronious. Lucy looked at him with confusion. What is that? Ian's eyes went wide. What? Did she just barge in here using a translation app or something? But a wave of fatigue quickly washed over him, blurring his vision. I'm still so sleepy. Right at that moment, Lucy seemed to muster up all her courage to speak. Actually, I came here knowing full well how dangerous it was. Mage Ian, there's something I need to tell you. Last night's ambush happened because of me. Shocking, right? I'm sorry for causing trouble. Ian also scratched his head in confusion, the atmosphere suddenly turning heavy. He recalled her terrified appearance that day and thought, is that why you were shaking like that? Ian lightly cleared his throat, frowning as he questioned her. So you're connected to those bandits? I guess you're planning to reveal your true identity now, huh? Lucy immediately fired back, no. What part of me looks like a bandit? Ian replied seriously. A beautiful bandit leader is a pretty standard trope in fantasy. She flushed red from a mix of anger and embarrassment, but couldn't find a way to counter. Finally, Lucy just lowered her head and confessed in a small voice. To be honest, this is a secret. I'm not Kathy. Hearing this, an image of Lucy in a lavish dress proudly declaring, I am the princess of a kingdom, instantly popped into Ian's head. Aloud, he responded nonchalantly. Is that so? But inside, he was starting to panic big time. Don't tell me you really are a princess. She told him seriously, my real name is Lucy. Lucy of the Tarian family. Those bandits were sent by my fiancé to kidnap me. Ian stared at her, repeating the word he just heard in his head. Fiancé. His eyes lit up. Don't tell me it's just a lover's quarrel. Noticing his strange look, Lucy immediately dismissed it. What's with that look? It's not what you think. Actually, I plan to run far away, so he could never find me. But after what happened yesterday, I don't have the confidence to run away on my own anymore. She grabbed his hand and spoke in an earnest tone. So please, Ian, help me escape. Overwhelmed, Ian asked back. No, wait a minute. What exactly are you running from? Did your fiancé do something terrible? Lucy recounted fearfully. The Tarian family holds a barony governing the Fine-Lep territory. Due to a lack of serving knights, we were always threatened by outside forces. Ultimately, the family betrothed me to a knight who was a former mercenary captain. Because he was the captain of the most powerful mercenary group at the time, the forces targeting our family backed off. At first, even he seemed satisfied with being the husband to a baronial house. But then he began to abuse the power he gained from that position. He started building a harem, treating me like a laughingstock. My parents couldn't stand it anymore and demanded to call off the engagement. But that bastard poisoned them. Reaching this point, Lucy's voice couldn't help but choke up. She sobbed and continued. Because if the engagement was called off, he would lose the power he had. So he poisoned my parents and silenced the servants. Ian frowned, cursing silently. This guy is an absolute scumbag. Lucy tried to compose herself and added, no matter how well he wields a sword, if he doesn't marry me, he's just a commoner. He can't inherit the assets of the Tyrion family. That's why I escaped with the help of a servant. Even if it kills me, I won't marry a man like that. To ensure the marriage happens, he will definitely keep hunting me down. So please, Ian, help me escape safe. So please, Ian, help me escape safely. And so, because of that, the fiancé is now at risk of being kidnapped. This feels so complicated, I don't even know how to describe it. I really can't comprehend the mindset of these medieval rulers. Lucy still held his hand tightly, her voice cracking. Please, I will definitely repay you. I swear it on the honor of the Tyrion family. Ian scratched his head, wondering, why me? What if I betray you? She immediately explained, oh, because that guy's super cheap. Even if you sell me out, he'll only give you a few silver coins. She bit her lip and continued. As for me, I can give you everything. He repeated with a puzzled expression. Everything. Her voice rang out with absolute certainty. Yes. If you want, I can even hand the entire Tyrion family over to you. The room fell into a dead silence. Ian stared at her quietly, his mind starting to race. So, does that mean I could even marry her? A farmer's kid becoming a semi-noble. That really is a rare opportunity. But if things actually go that far, then what about Ian Arides Raven, the disciple of Mage? Arides? Living as a noble and getting into politics doesn't sound like a bad life. But since I was born into a fantasy world, shouldn't I devote myself entirely to magic? By helping Lucy, I could probably also gain experience as a mage. Shouldn't I devote myself entirely to magic? By helping Lucy, I could probably also gain experience as a mage. He cleared his throat and spoke up. To be honest, you should ask someone who's better with a sword than me, because after all, a mage isn't a warrior. Terrified, Lucy's voice caught her throat. Ian suddenly stood up, cutting her off. But if there's a reward, I'll help you escape. As for the consequences later, you'll have to handle them yourself. Hearing that, Lucy buried her face in her hands and sobbed uncontrollably. He immediately panicked. Hey, why are you crying? Did I say something too harsh? I'm going to help you. She reached out to grasp his hand and said sincerely, Thank you. Thank you so much. As she spoke, Lucy leaned against his shoulder, tears streaming down nonstop. Ian remained silent, quietly offering comfort with a warm embrace. The sun gradually rose high into the sky, and the drake lay stretched out on the grass, looking completely content as he soaked up the sunlight. A faint sound from the cave entrance made him lift an eyelid to look over. The moment he saw Ian walk out, the drake greeted him cheerfully. Buddy, how are you feeling? Ian nodded in confirmation. I'm good. He muttered a bit more under his breath. The guy was even trying to pose in the sun, just to look cool in front of her. Ian looked up at the sky and suggested, We should head down the mountain soon. Everyone is waiting. Thanks for the gift. The drake looked at him happily. It's nothing special. Hop on. I'll give you a ride. Ian climbed on without any hesitation. Thanks, Drake. Lucy stood nearby, watching the two of them with a bewildered expression. Completely different from his gentle tone just now. The drake turned and barked loudly at her. Hey, Ian's girl. You get up here too. Ian shook his head to stop him. Hey, Drake, it's not like that. He turned his head with a confused look. It's not. Lucy stood frozen in place, her face full of question marks. What were they even saying? While she was still dazed, a hand suddenly extended in front of her. Ian leaned slightly toward her, saying softly, Get on behind me. Lucy gripped his hand tightly and climbed onto the back behind him. Seeing that both of them were seated firmly, the drake immediately pushed himself up, looking completely thrilled. All right, let's roll then. He whipped his tail back hard and shot forward like a gust of wind. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Andrian looked around anxiously and urged, You saw it too. All the mercenaries who came with us were wiped out. If those bandits are still lingering around here, we're goners for sure. Julian gritted his teeth and countered. But would bandits really just wander aimlessly through the forest? Besides, if they had any brains, wouldn't they have pulled out long ago? But then again, there's still something called duty. He immediately argued back. People who become bandits don't have brains to begin with. They'll definitely hunt us down. The two argued for a while before simultaneously turning around. Mr. Reek, what do you think? Reek was currently sitting quietly on a large rock, his chin resting in his hands as if pondering something deeply serious. Suddenly, he snapped his eyes open, and after a few seconds of silence, Reek delivered his conclusion. Let's wait for the mage. Andrian frowned and questioned back. What? Julian happily gave a thumbs up in support. As expected, we'll go with the guild master's decision. Reek crossed his arms and smiled with absolute confidence, thinking, he even defeated Drake. There's no way he'd bite the dust. He probably just ran into something and got delayed. They believed it without a shadow of a doubt. But 10 minutes later, they were ambushed by the bandits. The whole group, faces swollen from the beating, felt a deep sense of regret. We really should have run instead of waiting. Connor raised his hand in warning. Hey, stop crying already. I'll wrap this up quick. The other three shed tears like pouring rain, trembling as they begged. Spare us. We'll give you anything. Hearing that, the old man slowly sheathed his sword back into its scabbard, then began negotiating, then hand over the girl. Reek immediately froze. The girl. Connor stepped right up to his face, threatening him in a low, harsh voice. Yeah, I heard there's a really beautiful girl with dark blue hair here. Stop playing dumb. Reek opened his mouth, stammering, dark blue hair. Beside him, Andrian also turned to look at him blankly, repeating, beautiful girl. Right at that moment, both Julian and Andrian realized almost simultaneously that the person Connor was referring to was Kathy. Connor looked down at the three of them again and asked, where is she? Reek looked around in fear, whispering, hey, quickly find Kathy. Julian searched while trembling. Where did she go? A few seconds later, the three of them screamed almost at the same time, she's not here. Hearing that, the old man immediately drew his sword again, his voice turning cold. So that's how it is. The three hugged each other, sobbing and begging. Please spare us, Lord Mage. Right then, the ground shook violently, causing the bandits to look around in a panic. What is that? Reek, almost moved to tears, shouted out loud. The mage brought a drake, we're safe. Connor frowned in confusion. A mage, a drake? A bandit in the back suddenly widened his eyes and screamed. From afar, the drake was rushing toward them at a terrifying speed. The old man narrowed his eyes, noticing the girl riding in the back, and wondered, isn't that the girl? The cohort beside him swallowed hard, his voice shaking. Maybe, but isn't that thing she's riding right now a drake? Connor's face immediately turned pale as a sheet, and he practically screamed for everyone to run. Under the morning sunlight, an excited voice rang out. I'm so glad you're okay, Kathy. Reek, with a bruised eye, raised a finger. Good thing you were with the mage, otherwise those guys definitely would have done something terrible to you. Lucy couldn't help but mutter under her breath. I think your face looks what's terrible right now. Andrian put one hand on his hip, filled with doubt. How did those guys know about Kathy? Hearing that, Julian gasped in surprise beside him. Now that I think about it, they looked for Kathy the moment they got here. Even though they're part of the sacred heavenly church, doing something like this is just too much. In the back, Ian listened to these words thoughtfully. The heavenly church. His gaze turned sharp. It's been a long time since I last heard that name. Ian couldn't help but recall the world's largest religion in his mind. The heavenly church. Their doctrines forbid turning believers into slaves, but human traffickers and slave traders have long discarded those commandments. Ian crossed his arms, silently calculating. More importantly, even after seeing a mage and a drake, they still wouldn't give up on Lucy. He stood still, looking at her figure nearby. Talk about stubborn hunters. Do they really want to get married that badly? Ian thought about Connor's group, his entire face grimacing. This is bad. If this keeps up, she'll get discovered sooner or later. Then he turned his head to the side. Drake, can you do me a favor? He looked over and replied firmly. Of course, just say the word. Ian put one hand on his hip and requested. I want you to chase all those people away. Kill them if you have to. The drake's eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty gleam. If it's a friend's request, I'm glad to. He leaned over, watching the drake's back as it quickly moved away. Ian stood rooted to the spot, calculating silently in his mind. Of course, I didn't literally want to say kill, but this is a medieval fantasy world where killing is normal. If I want to survive in this world, I have to change too. Suddenly, he flinched and let out a painful groan. Ian reached up to support his head. I guess I used too much of the Moronius language again. Seeing this, Lucy immediately ran over to support him, asking with concern, Ian, is it a bit too much for you? Ian held his head and said, I'm fine. She frowned and began to nag. You call that fine? Reek's eyes lit up as he stroked his chin, staring intently at the two of them. Looking at their close interaction back and forth, he inquired, "You two look awfully close. Are you guys dating?" Afterward, Ian closed his eyes, lying on the wagon as they left with Reek's group. He felt a flash of light and snapped his eyes wide open. Ian looked at the notification screen. "Your Drake just killed another person." He gasped in thought. That makes 11 now. The automated summon report magic sure is handy, but it's a pity I can't call him out right in front of me. He stared intently at the notification screen before him. Suddenly, a calling voice echoed in his ears. "Ian," he replied softly, "Drake." On the other side, he breathed a blast of flame toward Connor's men and replied, "I've chased away everyone I could see." Ian crossed his arms, smiling brightly. "Thanks, you're helping me out a lot." Drake also smiled, replying goofily, "As long as it makes you happy, buddy, that's enough." Inside the canyon, his voice rang out. "Do you have to go?" He replied calmly, "Yeah, it's a shame, but we have to part ways now." Memories of their recent time together flashed through Ian's mind. Drake can't leave the mountain range. It's a real pity we won't be able to meet again. Drake lowered his head, speaking softly, "Thank you for everything." He looked up. "Same here." Suddenly, he lowered his head with an urgent face. "Oh, right. Are you interested in the mystery of the Phoenix?" Inside Riverview Castle, which had a river running right through it, Ian crossed his arms, unable to help but think. A phoenix. The words Drake had told him replayed in his mind. "I heard there's an ice phoenix in the northern mountains. Why don't you go check it out?" Ian silently pondered the information about it. A phoenix is a bird that doesn't disappear even in death. And there's not only the famous fire phoenix, but also ice, wind, and stone ones. They will change their form depending on the environment. They are known as monsters with incredibly high adaptability. Ian's eyebrows knitted together in worry. "I wonder if I can summon it." Reek's group, faces full of smiles, quickly ran over Lord Mage. He extended a hand forward, inquiring, "We're about to go meet the Lord. Would you like to come along?" Ian glanced to the side and thought, to let Lucy escape safely, it's best not to draw the attention of someone with high status like a lord. Andrian also suggested with an excited face, "Kathy, if you don't have anywhere to go, come with us." She looked around and agreed in embarrassment. Right after that, Lucy flinched as she felt Ian drape his arm over her shoulder. He pointed a finger at her and spoke up, "We're going to rest at the inn before setting off." Julian and Andrian gasped in shock, their mouths hanging wide open. Lucy's entire face flushed red as she raised her head to look intently at Ian. She closed her eyes, leaning her head against his chest. "Ah, I'm a bit tired." Reek, seeing this from behind, got incredibly thrilled. "So they are?" His face entirely flushed, he clutched his chest and laughed out loud. "They really are dating." Hearing the loud laughter, the people around looked over in confusion. Lucy smiled and followed Ian, calling out, "Pretending to date you is more convenient, saves us from dealing with annoying guys." "Still not turning around?" he asked back. "Really?" Her cheeks blushed slightly as she asked curiously, "By the way, why do you use honorifics with commoners?" Ian replied with a perfectly calm face, "Because I'm a commoner. I'm a farmer's son." Hearing this, Lucy wondered, "But you're a mage now." Ian walked quickly ahead and added, "No special reason. I'm just imitating my master." Inside, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "I want to become someone like master, friendly and polite." Hearing that, Lucy responded softly, her gaze still fixed on him. His voice rang out, inquiring, "So what do you plan to do next?" She followed up softly, "For now, I plan to go see Count Katina." Lucy cried out with a serious face, "He's my maternal uncle. If I explain the situation, I'm sure he'll help." Ian turned his head back out of curiosity. Sounds like her mother and the Count are quite close. She raised an eyebrow slightly, looking in another direction. "Not bad." Hearing that, Ian stared at Lucy. If it's not a guaranteed close relationship, it's a bit suspicious. He suddenly stopped, asking worriedly, "Aside from your uncle, is there anyone else you can trust?" Lucy immediately grew flustered. "Wait, are you doubting my uncle? There is no one in this world more trustworthy than him." Ian looked over with a calm face. "Is that so?" He thought to himself. If she says so, he must be a good person. Lucy reached out to pull her coat tighter, looking away. "Anyway, it's still better than someone I don't know at all. Other people would definitely find a way to marry me." With a face full of smiles, she leaned in close beside him to tease. "Of course, if an outstanding mage like you proposed, I'd be very happy too." Ian looked in another direction. Here we go again. Right after that, he looked over with a serious face. Our contract ends when we meet Count Katina, okay? Lucy put her hands behind her back in dissatisfaction. Isn't that a bit too cold? A noble is offering to marry you, you know. Ian still followed up nonchalantly. There are plenty of other women in the world besides you. Hearing that, she looked visibly annoyed, her cheeks puffing up. Next, her face completely flushed, Lucy walked ahead angrily. Heartless. Seeing this, he quickly chased after her. Where are you going? The inn is this way. After a long while, the bell outside the inn door jingled. The moment Ian and Lucy stepped inside, a welcoming voice rang out. Welcome. He quickly walked over to the counter. We'd like to stay for a few nights and use the bath. Ian placed a pouch of money on the table, inquiring, Is this enough? Looking at the gold coins inside the pouch, Leon's face turned respectful. More than enough. I'll get the room ready right away. Right after that, she pointed a hand at Lucy and inquired, By the way, will that young lady be bathing as well? She immediately brought both hands up to cover her chest, completely on guard. No need. Thank you. Ian frowned and called out. What's wrong? Don't tell me you also think the water's going to be dirty. Lucy's face flushed red. That's part of it, but she gripped the brim of her hat, crying out in annoyance. Do I really have to spell it out? Ian looked over with a confused face, remaining silent. Afterward, he walked into the medieval bathhouse, which had absolutely no privacy screens. Upon realizing this, Ian was startled and froze right on the spot. He looked at Lucy's embarrassed expression and said, Then I'll go alone. Her face full of exhaustion, she reached up to take off her cloak. Honestly, instantly, the men in the area shot greedy, leering looks over. Ian's eyes flashed with a sharp gleam as he glanced around. He immediately shouted out loud, Lucy, put your cloak back on. Putting her hands on her hips, she spoke up haughtily, Call me Kathy. Ian immediately rushed over, reaching out to pull Lucy's cloak up. Hurry up. Everyone's looking. She adjusted her cloak with her hands, crying out angrily, Geez, what a pain. Henry's group nearby flashed malicious smiles, looking inside the inn. The sound of whispering echoed from the room. Did you see that woman just now? Felix spoke up with an infatuated face. In all my life, I've never seen such a beautiful woman. Beside him, even also rubbed his hands together eagerly. Truly an angel descended to earth. Henry thought about Ian's slender build and added, There's only one person beside her, and he's just some scrawny pretty boy. He flashed an evil grin and suggested, How about we snatch her back to play with for a bit? Felix immediately chimed in loudly. Sounds good, but it looks like they didn't book the room for a long stay. The corner of Henry's mouth curled up. Then we'll just have to do it now. In the back, even cracked his wrists and shouted, We're snatching her today. The next morning, inside the magnificent castle, an inquiring voice rang out. So that's how it is. You guys want to do business here? Once rested his chin on one hand, waving them away with the other. Just do a good job. Don't cause any trouble for me. Reek immediately knelt down, respectfully thanking him. Thank you so much, my lord. He knelt on one knee on the ground, raising his head to look up and thought. I heard that as long as I please the Baron, I might even be able to enter this castle tonight. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in Reek's head. Right, why don't I tell him about the mage? Right after that, he immediately bowed his head and shouted out loud. Lord Baron, there is something I wish to report. Hearing this, Waltz raised an eyebrow and inquired, What is it? Right after that, he immediately bowed his head and shouted out loud. Lord Baron, there is something I wish to report. Hearing this, Waltz raised an eyebrow and inquired, What is it? Hearing these words, Waltz was overjoyed, reaching up to lightly stroke his mustache. Very commendable. Speak. Reek placed a hand over his chest, recounting sincerely. Actually, during my travels, I met a mage. Then he began waving his hand around as he retold the story. That person went like this, then whoosh, and did this too, saving us. Waltz sat up straight, touching his chin in thought. Incredible. Suddenly, Reek raised a finger, his voice dropping low. Hey, don't be surprised just yet. He immediately clapped his hands and added, That mage is currently staying at an inn in this town. Waltz's face immediately turned pale with shock as he gasped out loud. What? Waltz's face immediately turned pale with shock as he gasped out loud. What? Imagining the scene of Ian going wild and unleashing a drake to burn and kill everywhere, His expression grew even uglier. No, the situation would be even worse, because right now, there was actually already a bunch of lunatics within the territory. Waltz thought of the other group that had just arrived, the Knights of St. Santiago. A bunch of people who took up arms to serve God. They were both monks and warriors. Instead of fighting in wars, they hunted demons and monsters. The Holy Knight Order claimed to be the protectors of humanity. Waltz couldn't help but worry. But if that Santiago Knight Order and the mage who tamed a drake crossed paths in this territory, Waltz's entire face turned pale, filled with anxiety. Right after that, he immediately yelled out in a panic, "Commander!" Kevin immediately placed a hand over his chest, responding, "Yes, my lord." Waltz raised a finger and pointed at Reek, ordering, "Prepare a room for this man." His face was covered in cold sweat. Furthermore, summon the Santiago Knight Order immediately. Outside the castle, Waltz's anxious, unsettled voice echoed, "Bring them in before something happens." At the same time, back at the inn, Ian and Lucy were having a meal in the main hall. Nearby, a heavily bearded man asked angrily, "Where's my food?" Looking worried, Leon admitted her mistake. "Apologies, I'll have it ready right away." She rested her chin on one hand, letting out a heavy sigh. "The bathwater isn't even prepared yet." Ian immediately stood up. "Let me handle it. I'm supposed to be a helper anyway." Startled, Leon asked back, "Are you sure?" "I feel terrible about this." Especially while he was eating, he leaned into Lucy's ear to remind her, "Just go upstairs after you finish eating." Hearing this, she nodded and replied, "Got it." The moment Ian left, Lucy continued sipping her soup, one mouthful at a time. Seeing her sitting alone, Henry flashed a sly smile from behind. A moment later, once Lucy finished eating, she lightly walked up the stairs alone. Clasping her hands behind her back, she skippingly headed toward her room. Suddenly, a hand appeared, grabbing Lucy's arm to stop her. "Mississippi." Henry looked toward her, inquiring in a low voice, "Excuse me, are you the companion of that black-haired young man who just went out?" Lucy immediately yanked her arm back, questioning him in a cold tone. "Who are you?" Looking completely sincere, he placed a hand over his chest and replied, "I'm a runner hired by him." Right after that, Henry held out a gold coin and added, "He told me to take you to the docks right away." Hearing that, Lucy asked back, her face full of suspicion, "I thought he went to take a bath." The man immediately argued, but it seems something happened right after he went behind the bathhouse. Thinking of Graham's group, her face turned pale. "Don't tell me that crew chased us all the way here." Henry immediately extended a hand, urging loudly, "There's no time. Please follow me." Lucy quickly followed him out. "All right." She quickly ran down the stairs after Henry. The inn door was quickly pulled open. Lucy ran frantically after his receding back. Suddenly, she let out a gasp and abruptly stopped. From above, Lucy saw him sitting and watching a pot of water down in the courtyard. Ian. Right at that moment, Henry raised a sack high from behind her. Right after that, the inn door was quickly shut tight. While sitting in the courtyard, he suddenly heard Lucy's calling voice. "Ian." He turned his head back in confusion. "Lucy." Ian watched in confusion as Felix swung a wooden club from behind, aiming to strike him. He immediately ducked his head, smoothly dodging the attack. The old man immediately got his own legs tangled up. Ian looked at Felix as he tumbled down beside him, letting out a groan. He frowned, staring down at him in thought. Looks like he's not one of her fiancé's henchmen, just some small-time thug. Seeing Ian look over, Henry and even immediately urged loudly, "Hurry up." He immediately gritted his teeth, staring intently at the two of them, about to give chase. Felix immediately stood up, blocking the door. "Don't even think about running." Ian reached up to hold his head, letting out a sigh. Good grief, what a pain. Inside, he cursed angrily. I lost track of them because of this guy. Right after that, streams of blue light immediately manifested. Watching the surge of magic sweep past, Felix screamed in terror. What on earth is that? Ian closed his eyes, feeling the surge of power around him as he thought. With my current strength, I can't just use magic willy-nilly. In that case, among the mysteries willing to lend me their power, I have to find one that I can actually control. In the darkness, the shadow energy spoke up in response. Human, the light is fading. It's the perfect time to have some fun. Let's play together. Ian immediately snapped his eyes open. This voice, darkness. Next, he raised a hand high, shouting, "Oh, darkness." Seeing the streams of black mist, Felix screamed in terror. What on earth is that? He squatted down nearby, crying out in panic. Why did it suddenly get so dark? I can't see anything. Ian's eyes flashed with a crimson glow as he replied. When I cast dark magic, only I can see. You bastard. Right after that, striking sounds rang out along with Felix's begging voice. Spare me. Suddenly, the sound of running footsteps from a group of people approaching echoed from afar. Ian immediately raised his head to look up. Did this guy call for backup? He waved his hand, smoothly dispersing the surrounding darkness. Ian looked down at Felix, who was sitting on the ground, and questioned him. Hey, where did you take her? His face full of smiles, the old man screamed at the top of his lungs. Look, I can see now. Ian swung the wooden stick, striking Felix hard on the head, barking, Answer me, you bastard. Suddenly, a white blur flashed right past Ian's face. He turned his head to look, seeing a dagger embedded deep into the wall. Ruda stepped in front of Ian to stop him. That's enough, young man. His face grew serious as he heard the man inquire. That darkness just now? Ruda inquired with a perfectly calm face. Did you summon it? Ian looked at the group opposite him with a calm face and replied. Yes, I am the mage who summoned the darkness. Ruda led the group, staring intently at him with a serious expression. Ian frowned, completely filled with questions as he glanced toward him. What terrifying bloodlust. Who was that old man? His face black and blue. Felix knelt on the ground, pleading to Ruda, please save me. He reached out to grab the man's leg. Please save me. That mage tried to kill me for no reason. Hearing this, Ruda asked back in surprise, what? What? The corner of Ruda's mouth curled up slightly. So that's how it is? He put his hands behind his back, looking straight ahead. If it's a mage, then it makes sense. Under the afternoon sun, the pot on the stove was releasing thick clouds of steam. Ian looked up, asking in a cold voice, what exactly do you mean by understandable? Ruda replied with a completely calm face. Isn't that just how mages are? He held his head high and coldly added, people who do whatever they want. Hearing this, Ian trembled all over with anger. Next, his gaze swept toward the others. What does that old man think a mage is? Ian reached down and gripped the sword in his hand, shouting loudly, cut the crap. With a face full of rage, he raised his fist and yelled, that guy made the first move, so why would I just attack someone for no reason? Damn it. Immediately after, the entire space fell into an absolute dead silence. Ian's whole body went stiff, panic surging inside him. Crap. I accidentally raised my voice. If that old guy gets pissed and draws his sword. Suddenly, Ruda, standing opposite him, flashed a bright smile. He put his hands behind his back and said, judging by the way you talk, it seems you're a capable mage. Stepping forward with a serious expression, he added, however, that doesn't mean you're allowed to use dark arts. Ian's face instantly darkened as he demanded in a low, gritty voice, dark arts. He immediately stepped right up to Ian, asserting, yes. Shrouding the surroundings in darkness means hiding from the sun, the eye of the heavenly realm. Ruda crossed his arms, the corner of his mouth curling into a smirk. Hiding in the shadows is a cowardly act. Hearing this, Ian looked up at him, thinking, darkness is cowardly because it rejects the light? Huh. Staring at the crowd before him, he pondered, using religious language like that, they must be followers of the Holy Light Church. Right after that, Ian covered his mouth and let out a fake cough. With a perfectly calm face, he questioned back, isn't the coexistence of day and night the will of heaven? If the divine will only lay in the light, then what is the purpose of the night's existence? Dietrich paused and stammered. Well, that. Ian grimaced and shouted loudly. Just as the existence of the sun creates light, its absence creates darkness. This is a law of heaven, not a law I made up out of nowhere. So what's wrong with using it? Dietrich crossed his arms, freezing in place. Well, that. The people following behind immediately gathered around and began whispering. After a long silence, one man pressed his lips tightly together, staying quiet. Then, with a face full of smiles, he shouted, it's true that without permission, no one can create darkness under the sun. Then, with a face full of smiles, he shouted, it's true that without permission, no one can create darkness under the sun. Then, with a face full of smiles, he shouted, it's true that without permission, no one can create darkness under the sun. Felix instantly startled and screamed, what? My sister. Hearing these words, Ruda's eyes flared with murderous intent as he glared at him. So the reason you attack this person is because he's an accomplice of the kidnappers? Ian also glanced over. Yes. Felix, breaking out in a cold sweat, denied it. No, he dropped his head, stammering an explanation under that murderous glare. That's not it. Ruta raised a hand and ordered, Dietrich, you stay here and keep an eye on him. Placing a hand over his chest, he replied, Understood, master. Clasping his hands behind his back, he walked up to Ian. Young mage, I apologize for taking up your valuable time. Ruta smiled warmly, extending a hand to offer. Let me lend a hand as compensation. By the riverbank, Even and Henry were desperately trying to row their boat away. Ian led Ruta's group as they quickly caught up to the spot. A man raised his hand and pointed toward the boat. That's where the witness said. The man with the ponytail clenched his fists in anger. To think they would escape by boat. The man next to him also roared in fury. What a bunch of cowards. Ian glanced over in that direction, thinking, the sun has set, so moving by boat is highly dangerous. In that case, suddenly, a voice rang out, startling him. Everyone! With a face full of confusion, Ian turned his head back. What's going on? Ruta passionately raised his fist high. For a stranger, let us cross through this night together and pull that boat back in. The men behind him clenched their fists and shouted loudly. The Santiago Knights, protectors of the weak, we are ready to ride with you. Ian turned his head to look at them, thinking, so they're knights, protectors of the weak. Sounds pretty cool. He held up a hand to advise them. Getting on a boat right now is too dangerous. Ruta smiled warmly and waved his hand. No need to be so formal. Just speak casually. Ian froze in his tracks. I always talk like this. He still maintained his warm smile. There you go again. Ian watched Henry's group and began planning. I just found a hook. I'll pull the boat closer. When I do, throw the hook over there. Hearing this, Ruta gasped in shock. You're planning to pull the boat? He held out a hand, asking in confusion, don't you use shadow magic? How can you use water magic too? With a calm face, he followed up. I've completed beginner level in several different magic systems. Ruta stared at him with a serious face, pondering. This is strange. The mages I've seen on the battlefield could only use one system. His gaze turned sharp as he glanced backward. Besides, if it's only at the beginner level, shouldn't it be impossible to cast magic yet? Ian extended a hand forward and began chanting, O river, come to me. The knights watched the blue light gather, gasping in utter amazement. The water in the river instantly surged high, rushing toward the bay. Ruta's jaw dropped in shock. That goes way beyond any water magic used on the battlefield. On the boat, Henry felt the current pulling them. What is this? What's happening? Even who was rowing was also startled. The current is. Immediately after, their faces filled with panic as they watched a massive wave crash toward the boat. Under the glow of the setting sun, the boat capsized right in the middle of the river. The knights gathered on the bank, making a commotion as they headed straight over. Right at that moment, Lucy, her face covered in tears, rushed over and hugged him tightly. Ian, standing behind them, Ruta's eyes widened as he demanded, What are you doing? Can't you see your sister is crying? Ian immediately reached out and gently patted Lucy's back. It must have been really hard on you just now. She instantly buried her head in his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Ian looked off to the side, letting out a sigh. We need to get back to the inn quickly to wash up. He looked at the setting sun in the distance, thinking to himself, but at that time, I didn't know yet that a peaceful bath in this world. On the street, Ba was riding a horse at full speed, urgently clearing the path. Loud shouts rang out one after another. Everyone returned to the inn immediately. That kind of peace was something they could never have again. Hasten watched the white smoke rising high. That smoke was definitely from a battle. With a face full of worry, he rode his horse at full speed toward. Could the Lord's anxiety have actually come true? I looked over at Bernard next to him, sighing inwardly. This is trouble. Just having to lead this inexperienced young master is enough to cause a massive headache. He lowered his head, able only to let out a heavy sigh. At the spot where the white smoke was rising, noisy voices echoed. Let me scrub your back, sir. Then I'll do this side. Sitting in the tub of hot water, Ian replied, I'm fine. Right after that, the room door was violently kicked open from the outside. Bernard immediately rushed inside, shouting, What do you think you're doing? With a completely blank face, Ian looked up at him, bathing. Hearing this, he and Hansen screamed in pure disbelief. Bathing. Bernard glanced at the tub of water being heated. In a place like this, people of the Empire rarely bathed unless it was a special occasion. His eyes flashed with a sharp light, and with the surroundings in such a mess, something definitely happened. As the eldest son of the Lord of Riverviller, I have the right to a report. Bernard stepped forward, visibly agitated. Explain yourself better to me. Ruda bowed, placing a hand over his chest, and replied with a smile. Lord Bernard, I am Ruda. Please allow me to explain. Crossing his arms, he asked Snaps tightly, why you? I'm asking him. Hearing this, he asked back in surprise, excuse me? Ruda lowered his head and explained in a low voice, that's because that person over there is a mage. Bernard gasped in shock. A mage? What did you say? Right after that, a flash of insight struck his mind. Is he planning to do that? Bernard placed a hand over his chest, demanding arrogantly, Mage, I am the heir of the Cow's clan. Get out of that tub immediately and salute me. Ian instantly recalled that in this world, there was a noble custom called provoking a mage. Simply put, nobles would intentionally bait mages to test their capabilities. A mage who stayed calm under provocation was considered weak, while a mage who lost their temper was deemed truly powerful. Ian rested both hands on the edge of the tub, pondering, wait, is this the mage provocation that Lucy was talking about? Crossing his arms and looking down from above, he refused. No. Bernard's face twisted as he screamed. You, what did you say? Trembling all over, he roared in fury. You dare refuse me? Bernard stepped closer, yelling in rage. Someone like you dares to defy me? Ian asked back with absolute calm. Why should I do what you say? He immediately gestured wildly, ordering, Hanson, drag that fake mage out right now. Seeing Bernard being held back by Hanson, Ian praised silently. Not a bad performance. Then he let out a quiet sigh. Fine, if that's how it is. Ian's eyes flashed with a cold light as he demanded back. Fake? What did you just say? Watching the bursts of light flashing around them, Bernard was utterly terrified. What is this? Ian raised a hand high and levitated, and all the objects around them instantly flew up into the air. Bernard threw his hands up, frantically admitting defeat. Stop. I've seen enough of your power. I apologize for my rudeness. Right after that, in the blink of an eye, all the objects crashed down to the ground. Ian breathed a silent sigh of relief, stretching slightly as he thought. That should be enough to take him down a peg or two. He froze in his tracks as he saw Bernard roll onto the ground, crying his eyes out. Ian's expression went rigid as he stared blankly at the scene. Crap, did I go too far? What if his family gets furious and executes me? The next day, inside the magnificent white castle of Want, sunlight streamed in from the outside. His voice rang out. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Walt recalled the sight of Bernard hiding and crying, saying, And I heard my son cause you some trouble yesterday. Looking utterly exhausted, he picked up his teacup and sincerely apologized. Hearing this, Ian quickly chimed in, No, I should also apologize for going a bit overboard. Waltz looked across at him inquisitively. By the way, I heard you have a companion. Did you come alone? With a calm face, he followed up, She has some business to take care of at the inn. The scene before he left flashed through Ian's mind. There was no need to make Lucy show her face. Ruda assured with a face full of smiles, We are watching over your sister very carefully. Inside the grand room, a voice echoed, I see. He looked across seriously, inquiring, By the way, may I ask the name of your master? Ian replied nonchalantly, It's Lady Erides. Waltz gasped in surprise upon hearing that. I've heard of the rising star drawled. Master, are you heading south? Leaning back against the sofa, he confirmed, Yes, because that's where the Magic Academy is located. He asked back in utter amazement. So she isn't heading toward the Palgar Principality or the Roxland Principality, right? Ian's face tensed up. What do you mean by that? Waltz pondered for a long moment before continuing. Tensions have been quite high lately. He instantly froze as he heard the man add. It seems the Palgar Principality is targeting Roxland. Hearing this, Ian couldn't help but feel anxious. That meant a war could break out. Waltz looked across coldly, inquiring, Are you heading south as well? Knitting his brows tightly, he denied it. No, I'll be heading east to search for the arcane. He extended a hand forward. In that case, allow me to give you a gift. With a face full of curiosity, Ian looked over. A gift? He looked at the securely locked wooden chest on the table. What is it? Pointing toward the wooden chest, Waltz continued. Open it up and see. Ian reached out, gently lifting the lid of the chest to look inside. Immediately after, his eyes widened in shock. "This is a staff." Waltz's voice rang out, explaining that it was a staff once used by a wind element archmage. Looking calmly at the wooden box, he added, "Its name is Windwalker." Staring at it, Ian involuntarily repeated, "Windwalker." He immediately reached out and gripped the staff inside. Seeing Ian grip the staff tightly, Walt smiled and praised, "It suits you well." He spent a moment examining it. It looked like an ordinary staff, making him feel like he had just received a mage's starting equipment. Ian pursed his lips slightly, thinking happily, but getting a gift still feels good. Walt crossed his arms and laughed loudly. "This is my token of appreciation for overlooking my son's rudeness. Do you like it?" Gently stroking the staff, he replied, "Yes, thank you, sir." Inside the castle, Ian offered his sincere thanks. "I accept it with gratitude." That afternoon, a loud shout rang out outside the inn. Clutching his staff, Ian rushed out in surprise. "What's going on?" With a face full of anxiety, Lucy reached out and grabbed Ian's hand. "It's urgent." Her voice was filled with frantic haste. "We need you." The image of a crow with blood-red eyes, trapped inside a cage, appeared before them. Ian furrowed his brows, looking at the creature in front of him with confusion. "A crow." Ruda walked closer and raised his voice. "A hunter caught it this morning and planned to eat it, but your companion stopped him." Lucy immediately flashed a playful, childlike grin. "Your name is Ian Erides Raven, and this is a crow. Don't you think it feels like destiny or something?" After hearing this, the way Ian looked at her became even stranger. Seeing that he remained silent, Lucy squirmed like a worm again. "This is totally fate, right?" Ian sighed and coldly turned his head away. "Sorry for the trouble. Just go ahead and eat it." Her voice pitched up in dissatisfaction. "Hey, you talk without a shred of consideration. The mage here is me, not you, right? What on earth are you talking about?" Waiting for just that moment, Adrian immediately snatched the crow cage. "Thanks for confirming. We'll have it for lunch today then." But just as he turned to leave, Ian suddenly heard a panicked cry. "Please save me, kind human." He swiftly turned back around. "Hold on." Ian quickly used bee-speaking magic to communicate with it. "What are you?" The obsidian crow wept and made a massive fuss, crying out, "Please save me." Ian still attempted to communicate with it under everyone's bizarre stares. "Answer me. What are you?" But it only repeated the exact same line, "Please save me." Seeing this, he fell into deep thought. It didn't seem to understand the Moronius language, perhaps lacking enough arcane capacity, but Ian still didn't give up trying to talk to it. "Hey, crow." Obsidian was busy squawking frantically like the house was on fire. "Please help me. Don't kill me." Even though he was interrupted, he remained patient. "I'll help you, so shut your mouth first." In the end, it didn't understand, so it only screeched even louder, "Please come here." Ian was utterly driven mad by it. So, he yelled even louder than the crow, "All right, I'll help. So shut up." Only then did Obsidian finally behave itself. Seeing this, the corner of Ian's mouth twitched up involuntarily. This guy didn't understand words, but it certainly understood the situation. Beside him, Adrian and Dictry looked at him with eyes full of admiration. "Sir Mage, are you actually talking to that crow?" "That's amazing." Ian relayed its words. "Yes, it said it wants to be saved. For now, just hand it over to me." Hearing that, Lucy proudly patted her chest. "See? I told you this crow wasn't ordinary." Ruda flashed a gentle, elder-like smile. "It seems the young lady, like you, can also perceive the arcane." Her head lifted high, almost parallel with the ceiling. "Well, you know, I've never studied it, but I must have a natural talent for magic." Ian could only roll his eyes in sheer helplessness. Here she goes again. After that, he took Obsidian away and bandaged its wounds. Ian looked at its goofy appearance and smirked. "Are you all good now?" Lucy couldn't take her eyes off the crow. "Yeah, it'll heal in no time." Suddenly, her face slumped in sadness. "So what do you plan to do with this crow?" "Give it back to the hunter." After everything that happened, Ian himself couldn't bear to do that. Otherwise, it would just end up being eaten. As if understanding, Obsidian suddenly hopped onto his hand and begged pitifully. "It looks just like a puppy. Please don't abandon me. The humans here are terrifying." Obsidian's tears kept pouring down like an open faucet. "Please." Ian's eyebrows knit together closely. What a pain. Without saying another word, Ian simply placed Obsidian on his shoulder. Seeing this, Lucy's eyes instantly lit up. "Are you planning to bring it along?" He gave a slight nod. Actually, I only intend to keep it temporarily, at least until it fully recovers. She got excited like a child all over again. Then we have to name it. Ian hadn't thought about this yet, so he blanked out for a moment. A name. Lucy leaned in closer, happily suggesting, how about calling it Obsidian since its eyes are pitch black? Looking at the crow's starstruck expression, he felt utterly helpless. This guy was basking in the joy of getting attention from Lucy, but Ian was too lazy to remember a long name. So he immediately corrected her. Too long. Let's call it Oberon. Since she only cared about having a new companion, she agreed readily. Fine. He reached out and gently patted Obsidian's head. From now on, your name is Oberon. A second later, it suddenly flapped its wings and belted out loudly. Quickly present your tributes and receive my blessings. Ian's eyes didn't bother hiding his disgust at its sudden display of arrogance. I guess it's happy. Suddenly, Lucy took the initiative to suggest, oh, right, Ian, I was thinking maybe we should travel with the knights. He fixed his gaze intently on the person beside him. The knights, clearly. She was a bit anxious about the journey ahead. I think it would be better than going alone. Ian suddenly visualized the beefy, muscular statures of those men. It made sense. Bandits wouldn't easily attack. But what if they aren't heading in the same direction as us? As if noticing Ian's hesitation, Ruta pushed the door open and walked in. What are you worried about? He was startled half to death. Elder. He sat down across from Ian. Even if you're a mage, traveling alone with a woman is still dangerous. How about we make a deal? He was slightly confused. A deal? A gentle smile played on his face. Yes, actually, we are on our way to exterminate monsters that have appeared in Baron Katina's territory. Hearing those words, Ian instantly tensed up. Monsters. Ruta's voice turned slightly somber. Do you know about the creature called a manticore? It's a monster shaped like a giant lion. The manticore is a beast notorious for its brutality and love for slaughter. Ian had vaguely caught on to his intention. Yes. Don't tell me you want me to go hunt a manticore with you guys. But Ruta shook his head in denial. No, we don't want to drag you into danger. Of course, if you want to help, we won't refuse either. After hearing this, Ian remained silent for a long time. A moment later, he suddenly stood up from his chair and rolled his eyes, about to walk away. Then I refuse. Ruta burst out laughing, quickly grabbing his shoulder to hold him back. At least hear me out first. What we need from you isn't hunting. Ian sat back down in his original spot. Then, Ruta slowly recounted their background. In truth, we are a knight order established by a sect of the Holy Light Church. However, when we said we were going to hunt the manticore, a clear look of sorrow appeared on Ruta's face. It seems the priests in the Count's territory forced a mage to assist them. That probably rubbed them the wrong way. So we want you to step in and mediate with that mage. A mage's words will carry more weight than a knight's. Hearing this, Ian merely lowered his eyes in contemplation. Not a bad deal. Just smoothing things over with that mage would get them a knight escort. After a moment of consideration, he finally agreed. All right then, let's go together. This might have been the best decision Ian had ever made. Traveling with the knights was incredibly comfortable. The members of the Santiago Knights were all good people. They were also strong enough that Ian didn't have to lift a finger, leaving him completely pressure-free. But if there was anything to complain about, while Ian was eating grilled meat, Dick Try suddenly raised his voice. Sir Mage, would you like to study the Holy Scriptures? The remaining two knights immediately joined in enthusiastically. Let's study together. Count me in too. But naturally, Ian flatly refused. No, thanks. The three of them shouted in unison, why not? He didn't bother paying attention to them and focused on eating. Even though it was comfortable, they kept trying to drag him into religion. Ruta chuckled a few times and sat down across from Ian. That's quite a pity. Chewing his meat, Ian asked in confusion. Why is that? He had seen potential in Ian early on. If you wanted to, you could have become a clergyman of the Holy Order by now. Hearing that, he fell back in a deep thought. The voice of a god? If I can really talk to a god, maybe I can ask why I reincarnated and about the status window. His mind made up, Ian walked over to Dick Try. Sir, can I join in on studying the Holy Scriptures too? All that night, the older man taught Ian with absolute dedication. He studied with intense focus, seemingly tireless. Right then, a gentle voice spoke up, sounding incredibly polite. Ian didn't even bother looking up. Yeah, thanks for the compliment. Dick Try heard this, and his eyes widened in surprise. What are you talking about out of nowhere? He didn't have a clue what was going on either. You just said I had a good attitude. The older man was scared out of his wits. I didn't say anything. Did you hear something? Ian thought he was hallucinating from sleep deprivation, but he had clearly heard someone speak. Right at that moment, a thought flashed across his mind. That wasn't a human voice. The voice rang out again, carrying a hint of amusement. Who knows? Ian suddenly bolted upright, startling Dick Try half to death. The voice kept echoing in his head. Am I not something that could be called human? Ian pointed his finger at the sky and shouted loudly. You're a god, aren't you? A massive vortex above suddenly spoke. I guess so. He grit his teeth in anger, utterly speechless. You. Ian refused to give up, pressing further. What is that status window? Why did you reincarnate me into this world? But in response, he only received a wave of mocking laughter echoing throughout the sky. Frustrated, he used every ounce of his strength to roar. Answer me. Suddenly, a streak of blue light surged forward and pierced straight through Ian. Following that, the sky became perfectly clear again, just like before. His face darkened as he realized something was wrong. Don't tell me. Ian felt his head spin, a profound sense of letdown washing over him. You really left, didn't you? He gritted his teeth so hard that the veins on his forehead popped. Hello. Getting no answer, Ian jumped up and down in rage. Hey God, get back here right now. The soldier next to him quickly held him back. Hey. While Ian was still struggling, yelling for it to get down here this instant, the other soldiers joined in to restrain him. Please calm down. Hey, what's going on? After that, he threw himself into studying the holy scriptures like a madman. The creator, or whatever they called God, had thrown me into this world just to stand back and laugh. Ian didn't get any answers, left with nothing to do but swear up a storm. He wanted to ask the god directly, but his divine magic level was too low to initiate a dialogue. He stood up again, resigning himself to the situation. Then, Ian quietly left the area. I have to find more arcane knowledge and rack up points just to talk to that damn god again. And as a result, he obtained a new skill, holy magic skill, the ability to converse with the elegant, noble, divine, beautiful, and absolute ruler of this world. Great job, Ian, and the punishment arrived immediately. Pay attention to God, study more, and understand him better. The more attention you pay, the happier he will be. The elegant, noble, divine, and beautiful ruler of this world. Ian closed the book with tears in his eyes. Is this really the god who granted me this skill? At that moment, Ruda swung his sword and cut down an intruder. With just a single strike, the guy quickly collapsed to the ground. Covered in blood, he glanced at the people nearby. Hey, rookie mage, is everything okay? Ian timidly raised his hand, his voice barely a squeak. Yes. But looking at the wounded scattered across the ground, fear welled up in his heart. Of course not, because you guys completely wiped them out. Ruda looked over at Lucy, who was hesitating beside him. Are you hurt? Her voice faltered. I'm fine. What about the elder? As night gradually fell, Ian looked up at the starry sky and leveled up his holy magic. A few days later, just as the first ray of sunlight hit, the sharp, cold clashing of blades echoed through the forest. Below, both factions were locked in a fierce, brutal battle. The soldiers under his command joined in, howling with roaring enthusiasm. Hasten took the lead to guide the way. Master, the path splits in two. He seemed all too familiar with this route. The east path led to the Count's castle, while the west path led into the forest where the Manticore had appeared. Ruda pointed toward a section of the forest. The direction where that mage lives is this way. Then he waved his hand to call everyone. Let's move. Ian suddenly hesitated and asked to stay back a moment. Please wait a second. Ruda seemed to see right through Ian's anxiety and comforted him. No matter how old I get, I won't lose to things like this. Feeling as though a weight had been lifted, he spoke casually. I heard you used to be a mercenary. That's amazing. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, looking confident. I might not look it, but I had quite a reputation in my youth. Then Ruda swung his sword with an air of absolute authority. That's why I use the title Elder. There are too many fools who judge me just by looking at my name and try to pick a fight. Ian's gaze lowered as he fell in a deep thought. So you're famous enough that everyone recognizes your name? Then he turned to address Lucy, who was standing timidly beside him. Lucy, let's go meet the mage first before heading to the Katina territory. But she turned him down. No, I'll go on ahead. Ian's face filled with worry. Are you going to be okay alone? To put his mind at ease, she flashed a bright smile and quickly turned away. I'm not a child. Going this way will get me to Uncle's place in no time. Lucy even gave a cheerful wave goodbye. See you later. Ian watched her retreating figure, anxiety still gripping his heart. Is she really going to be okay? Ian didn't take his eyes off Lucy, telling himself, I need to wrap things up quickly and catch up to Lucy. Suddenly noticing Lucy was missing, Ruta asked, Where did your sister go all by herself? He replied calmly, Just for a bit. I'll catch up with her right away. He replied calmly, Just for a bit. I'll catch up with her right away. Putting an arm around his shoulder, he grinned slyly. Are you mentally prepared? Ian's face twisted in annoyance. Mentally prepared? Ruta's smile vanished, his voice tinged with seriousness. Mages are naturally fickle, aren't they? They're frustrated with the church, so who knows what they might do. Ian glanced at him, questioning, Why do we have to clean up the church's mess? Ruta's face turned pale, guilt causing sweat to pour down him like rain. He recalled the image of witch Monty Campbell, a wood element archmage, who was enthusiastically cooking away. The stew looks delicious. Damien burst in out of nowhere with a crowd of his lackeys. Mage Monty, please help our knight order eliminate the manticore. His eyes flared with murderous intent. Please don't forget, this is an official request from the church. Monty bared her fangs, revealing only a few remaining teeth. Good grief. She still kept stirring the pot continuously. If you want my help, at least eat the dish I cooked and pretend it tastes good. Ian followed Sanvardo, who led him to a house deep inside the forest. An apothecary. He gave a slight nod of confirmation. Yes, Monty Campbell is a famous apothecary. The reason behind it is simple. Not only can she control plants, but she can also concoct terrifying poisons from plant toxins. Having said this, Sanvardo cautiously reminded him, Since we need potent poison to hunt the manticore, it just so happens. Suddenly, a pungent scent blasted straight into their noses. What's that smell? Ian paused for a moment in surprise. Wait, this smell is coming from inside that small house in the woods. The aroma kept drifting out, and instantly a flesh and blood Monty appeared with a piercing cackle. I've been waiting for you, Santiago warriors. At this, Sanvardo frowned slightly at Monty Campbell's welcoming display. Monty went ahead and extended an open invitation. I'm so glad you all came. She directed her gaze toward the pot of stew sitting on the table. Come, enjoy the feast I've prepared. A moment later, Ian's group managed to step inside Monty's house. Each person was ladled a bowl of stew that carried a foul odor. This smell is way too strong. Ruta still refused to take his hand away from his nose. There's no need to prove your strength this way. She let out a sigh, as if trying to justify herself. I'm simply treating my guest to a rare dish made from plants my husband painstakingly raised. But a second later, she resorted to provocation. And if you aren't guests, you can leave. These words momentarily left him at a loss for words. On the other side, Lucy had to pinch her nose just to dare take a spoonful. Male, sitting next to her, only dared to sit and watch. But unexpectedly, Uncle couldn't hold it in and threw up a few times, all of which was caught by Monty's eyes. Did I go a bit overboard? That thought ground to a halt when she shifted her gaze over to Ian. By the way, why is that guy eating so much? You're eating as if you've never had a good meal before. Who is that guy? Swallowing a whole bowl of soup full of garlic like that. Driven by curiosity, Monty Campbell quickly walked over to investigate. Are you okay? Ian didn't forget to grab a chicken drumstick while his eyes lit up. It's delicious. This line left her stunned for a second. Delicious. A crisis of existence welled up inside her heart. No way. He picked up an unpeeled clove of garlic and marveled. Yes, especially this garlic. It tastes great. Right after saying that, Ian popped it straight into his mouth. The onlookers froze in shock, including Monty Campbell. She rushed over, gripped his shoulders tightly, and screamed, Stop! I've been an apothecary for 40 years, and I've never seen anyone as bizarre as you. Ian's eyes went wide, a completely clueless look on his face. Bizarre. Monty crossed her arms, her gaze turning intensely scrutinizing. What's your name? Without hiding a thing, he directly stated his full name, Ian Arides Raven. Hearing that name, she gasped in shock. Arides. Monty's trembling finger pointed right at Ian. Then you are. She emphasized her next words with absolute clarity. The disciple of the fire, Mage Arides? And so, the story was told until nightfall draped over them. Please forgive me for testing you. Monty's voice had grown noticeably softer. As an apology, eat as much as you like. Ian glanced over at the plate of food, neatly placed on the table. The chicken stew really is good. Right at that moment, she brought up the main matter. So you plan to hunt the manticore? Someone spoke up to confirm, yes. Instantly, Monty's face darkened. It won't be easy because of a highly reliable piece of news. The Count had sent hunters to catch the manticore, but they were all wiped out by that monster. To her surprise, Ruta was fiercely determined. I'm prepared for it. Monty fired back a question. Have you ever hunted a manticore before? He replied in a low tone. A few times in my youth. She turned her attention back to Ian. And you? He was caught a bit off guard, me. Monty's eyes narrowed dangerously. Trained by Erides. Surely you must be a skilled mage by now. She put forward a suggestion. Why don't you contribute some of your wisdom to the Night Order? A fragment of memory suddenly flooded Ian's mind. What a mage ought to do. Someone's voice echoed, lecturing. That's right. Every mage will eventually have to interact with others, even if they don't want to. Erides smiled faintly and advised, you must absolutely never take that moment lightly. Erides smiled faintly and advised, you must absolutely never take that moment lightly. Because the Mage Association, an organization established by mages and led by the Magic Academy, aims to ensure the proper use of the arcane. The more Ian thought about it, the more difficult he felt it would be. If so, I'll have no face left to meet my master, and I might not be able to ask other mages for help when needed. He stole a quick glance at the group next to him. Every single one of them placed their trust in Ian. So be it. And just like that, he swiftly arrived at a decision. I will go with you guys. The next day, inside the somewhat quiet forest, Ruta and Ian took the lead as the group advanced deep inside. The atmosphere was a bit tense. Lucy was probably waiting. Hopefully she was okay. Right at that moment, Oberon flapped its wings and flew back to report. Master, I found it. It perched on his shoulder and added, the manticore is over there. Standing beside him, Ruta looked slightly anxious. Is something wrong? Ian pointed at Oberon before replying, according to this guy, it's this way. By now, Ruta was looking at the creature with completely different eyes. Incredible ability. As for him, he glanced at Oberon while it chirped. When it perched on his shoulder, I had accustomed it to human speech, thanks to necromancy and summoning magic. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. They continued to follow the path Oberon had pointed out. I can sense a powerful, murderous intent. Suddenly, Ian spoke up out of curiosity. Elder, can I ask you something? He replied casually, what is it? The question was quickly put forward by him. If the manticore is also a monster, Ian knit his brows slightly and paused for a beat. Can't I just persuade it? After a moment of thought, Ruta simply replied with 2 words, hard to say. Monty chimed in at this point. A manticore isn't the type of creature you can talk to. With a serious face, he taunted her. What does an apothecary know about summoning magic? She got so angry that she practically jumped. I happen to understand what the arcane is. And so, Monty resorted to a threat. If you actually manage to persuade it, I'm telling Erides. However, this statement went completely against natural logic. Instead of praising me, you're going to tattle to my master? Right at that moment, Dick Try cried out loudly, Master! On the other side, the entire group instantly looked in the same direction. What caught their eyes was the murderous intent coming from the glowing eyes of the manticore. Over there, Ruta, along with everyone else, stared deep into the forest. It was looking right this way. Ruta continued to instruct them. You two stay by my side at all times. Monty quickly replied, got it. Suddenly, someone called out, causing Ruta to whip his head around. Master, a soldier stepped in front of him and informed, I've coated all the weapons in poison. The man then presented 3 arrows drenched in the poison specially formulated by Monty. A second later, Ruta decisively fired the 3 arrows deep into the forest. Good. Ian watched this scene, suddenly falling silent, his thoughts unreadable. The arrows were whizzing rapidly forward. Suddenly, Ian felt a tingling sensation throughout his body, his eyes turning completely white. The arrow bounced right off the manticore's body the moment it hit. Ian walked back over to report. The arrow struck its neck and bounced right off. Ruta said in confusion, that's impossible. The soldier asked frantically, Master, what do we do? The shadow manticore stepped out, its eyes glowing fiercely as it scoffed. Attack again. Ian looked at the beast, fear surging inside him. That laugh gives me goosebumps. Right then, he realized the manticore was already right in front of them. No time to reapply the poison. Ian clenched his fists. It looks like there's no other choice. A second later, his entire demeanor turned fierce, his mouth roaring aggressive. Everyone standing behind was stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening yet. Monty looked at Ian's back and marveled. That kid actually did it. Before everyone's eyes, the manticore involuntarily stood frozen in silence. A moment later, the beast slowly stepped forward and offered a compliment. To think a human would dare strike up a conversation with me. How rare. Hearing this, Ian told himself with a bit of tension. All right, keep calm just like before. He held out his hand and said, good thing you can understand me. I'm Ian, a mage. But the manticore brutally snapped, screw off. This line left Ian completely dazed, his whole body freezing up. A split second later, the manticore showed zero respect and threw dung right at Ian's head. Eat that, you foolish human. Ian stood frozen, his face turning dark. He couldn't hold back from speaking up. What's your deal? You. The manticore nodded approvingly at that. That's more like it. Drop that respectful tone. It furrowed its brows deeply and growled. So what do you want from me? Ian also grew tense. The manticore's words continued to lay things out bluntly. At this point, Ian didn't hesitate to point his finger straight at the beast and say, your scalp. After that, only the ecstatic laughter of the manticore echoed through the deep forest. Looking at Ian's bewildered expression, the beast praised with amusement. You're straightforward. I like that. A second later, the manticore bared its razor-sharp teeth and proposed, Mage Ian, how about you team up with me to tear through these human corpses? These words caused Ian's eyes to widen in utter shock. What? The manticore lost itself in a bloodthirsty delusion. I'll enjoy the flesh. The beast painted a picture of absolute pleasure for Ian, and you will have gold, silver, and women. The manticore continued in a cold voice. When you get tired of the women, I'll kill them. Finishing its sentence, the beast licked its chops disgustingly. It's going to be so much fun. Hearing this, Ian was entirely speechless. Good grief. He then spat disdainfully right at the manticore's feet, finding the words absolutely repulsive. Not stopping there, Ian threw up his middle finger right in the manticore's face. You bastard. The soldiers witnessing this display were equally bewildered. At this, the manticore drew itself up to its full height and spoke coldly. Fine then. And just like that, in a fraction of a second, the beast lunged straight at Ian. Flying into a fierce rage, the manticore roared violently. Killing you will be well worth it. Ian was suddenly caught off guard, only managing to recognize the Imperial language. Right then, Monty Campbell commanded the plants to surge upward. She stomped her foot hard onto the ground, and a glowing sprout instantly erupted from the earth. In an instant, sturdy branches rapidly extended from the young sprout, ensnaring the manticore. Ruda narrowed his eyes to observe. After a short while, he saw the beast get completely swallowed up by those rigid branches. Seeing this, Ruda barked anxiously. Monty, what on earth did you just do? Monty replied nonchalantly. Are you blind? I've eaten the manticore. Ruda continued to press her, along with the knights standing nearby too. Despite being a bit flustered, Monty stubbornly stated, Get real. You're not a child anymore. Handle it yourself. Killing and eating the manticore is the top priority. Suddenly, Ruda noticed something and looked up in startle. He started moving his feet, and then Ruda ran straight inside. Confused, Ian called after him, Elder, wait up. Arriving at the spot, Ruda asked anxiously, Hey, is everyone all right? Ian also arrived right at that moment, drenched in sweat. Master, the soldiers stammered out, we're fine. But suddenly, Ian's eyes went wide with absolute panic. Dictry lay on the ground, his body covered in injuries and wrapped in bandages everywhere. The soldiers continued. Personally, it's fine. Ruda went over to help him up. Dictry struggled to force out each word. I'm sorry, Master. We let the manticore get away. But Ruda immediately scolded. What are you talking about? This scene pulled at Ian's heartstrings. Pursing his lips, his hands suddenly clenched into fists as Ruda's voice of encouragement echoed. You guys did your best. Ian thought back to Dictry's honorable moments and sighed to himself. He had never expected to witness death firsthand, let alone Dictry's. Only now did it truly sink in. In his mind, he pictured the monster running rampant. This was a world where monsters and martial artists were just a part of daily life. They submerged everything in a sea of fire. The death he had only ever seen in stories before was now a reality, right in front of his eyes. After thinking for a long time, Ian quickened his pace toward everyone. He sat down, took Dictry's hand, and called out softly, "Dictry." Ian flashed a warm smile and brought up the words from years ago. "You told me that when you were teaching the scriptures, didn't you?" Under the vast blue sky, Dictry's words resonated deeply. "Believe from the bottom of your heart and pray, and the heavens will open." Hearing these words, tears rolled down his cheeks. Yes, a moment later, the space around them was filled with a mystical light. "Let's pray together." Ian's eyes lowered slightly as he whispered, "Almighty Sky, are you watching?" Sitting beside Dictry, he continued to mutter, "Your most devout believer is right here. He's dying. Aren't you going to do something?" Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light appeared and spoke. "Your sky is right here, Ian." Before Ian could process what was happening, the sky made another offer. "If that's what Ian wants, let's give it a try." Then, in an instant, the light in the air turned blindingly bright across the horizon. Seeing this, Ruta smiled and shouted, "Ian!" By this time, Ian had let go of Dictry's hand. Ruta hesitated, saying, as the blue light gradually faded, Ian stared in daze at the palms of his hands, which were glowing. A deep, sweet voice entered the man's subconscious. "Wake up, Dictry." A magical light enveloped the goddess. She slowly extended her hand forward as if to support him. Dictry's eyes widened in astonishment as he mumbled, The goddess." His heart surged with thoughts. "It's so good to see you." But because of that, Dictry trembled even more in disbelief. "Why is the goddess here?" "So this is heaven." She closed her eyes, sensing the anxiety within him, and gently instructed, "You still have work to do." Dictry jumped up in a daze, utterly confused. "The work I have to do?" The goddess gently extended her arm within the sparkling light to guide him. "Spread my will further, help the weak, and bring them happiness." Dictry's eyes narrowed in shock at her next words. "And assist my apostle, Ian." A blinding flash of light gradually appeared before his eyes along with one final message. "That is my wish." The very next second, Dictry snapped awake from a dream. His blurry vision gradually caught sight of familiar faces. Ruta was the first to notice. "He's awake." The other person was also shocked and quickly called his name. "Dictry, you're awake?" Dictry was drenched in fresh blood, yet he woke up in a state of panic. Where's his place? Just as he was looking around in a daze, a voice drifted over from afar. "Dictry." Ian, holding his staff, smirked teasingly. "How does it feel to return from the dead?" Ian, holding his staff, smirked teasingly. "What does it feel to return from the dead?" He knelt down at Ian's feet, deeply grateful for this grace. "You saved me according to the will of that great being, didn't you?" He glanced at the kneeling man, feeling a bit awkward, but honestly, Ian couldn't deny it either. Well, he could only use holy magic because the goddess of the Church of the Angels had lent him her power, so what the guy said wasn't completely wrong. So he nodded in acknowledgement. "How did you know?" "The goddess told me I had to save you because you still have a lot of work to do." Dictry jolted as he recalled her words from his dream. "You still have work to do." Dictry looked like he had just realized something amazing, his eyes full of admiration. Then he prostrated himself at Ian's feet as respectfully as possible. "I bow before you, the apostle sent by the goddess." The people traveling with him thought Dictry was being ridiculous. There was no doubt Ian had used magic to save Dictry, but calling him an apostle of the goddess? The guy must be hallucinating. Better keep an eye on him for a while. But everyone also breathed a collective sigh of relief, their hearts filled with peace. Mani stood with her hands on her hips, unable to resist chiming in unexpectedly. "Everyone almost died, yet you're still pushing yourself so hard." After gathering his wits, Ruta rallied his teammates. "All right, let's keep hunting the manticore." The whole crowd answered with burning enthusiasm as they set off again. Right. Ian also began mapping out a different plan with his pet crow. "I'll have Oberon scout ahead." Hearing this, he seemed a bit worried. "Is that okay? It could be dangerous." After the crow soared up into the blue sky, he quietly replied with a single word, "No." Ruta truly didn't understand what he was up to. Remembering the dangerous look on the manticore's face, Ian grew even more determined. He glanced at everyone with a serious expression. "I know that thing isn't just ordinary trash, so we have to beat it to a pulp." In the town, mournful screams and scattered ruins were everywhere. The manticore attacked a village, scaring the locals out of their wits. A monster! The villagers panicked and ran in all directions. A young man was holding his father's hand when suddenly his father fell backward. Roland looked back in horror, screaming, "Father!" But there was nothing he could do. The manticore was already standing right behind his father, just a few steps away. Without hesitating for a single second, he held his rake out in front of the creature threateningly. "Get out of this town." Even though Roland tried his best to calm himself down, his entire body kept shaking violently. "You monster!" The manticore smirked in disdain. "So this human is your father." Roland grew even more terrified. "How can you speak human tongue?" Its deep, rumbling voice boomed with a challenge. "I'll make you a good offer. Kill your father and bring him to me. If you do it, I'll spare the lives of the rest of these humans." Roland shook more and more, but he wouldn't agree to such an outrageous demand just because of that. "Do you think I'd ever agree to that?" The manticore flashed a bizarre grin. "Then there's no other way." It roared loudly, baring its fangs and claws forward. "Die." In that critical moment, he used his own body to shield and protect Bastion. "Father!" Right before the fatal blow, a piercing arrow flew through the air. Blood began to pour from the manticore's body, revealing a fresh wound. Ruta showed up just in time. The moment he arrived, he engaged the manticore in battle to stop it from taking any more innocent lives. The father and son looked up in a daze. "The Santiago Night Order." Ruta looked at the people behind him and shouted with absolute authority, "Prepare for battle." The group began to form up, aiming straight at the monster in the center. Even though the manticore was blinded in one eye, its fighting strength remained fierce. It bared its teeth in utter rage. "Do you beasts want to die that badly?" Ian appeared in the meadow where the sunlight illuminated him, letting out a smirk. What a desperate fool. Ian's gaze was full of pure contempt, still struggling in vain at this point. Being mocked made the manticore lose its temper. "Shut up, Mage." But he still treated it like nothing more than an eyesore. Is that just the barking of a loser? All talk and no action. He successfully provoked the manticore, causing it to turn and charge right at him. Insolent. With that, it rushed headlong toward its opponent. But all of this was exactly within Ian's calculations. The manticore continued to charge forward furiously at top speed. Right at the critical moment, Madame Monty Campbell shielded Ian. She muttered a few incantations. "Oh, growing wood." The plants suddenly twitched and shot upward. Vines suddenly formed thick ropes on both sides of the manticore, wrapping tightly around it. What is this? Ruta and his troops seized this perfect opportunity to strike. Now the soldiers began to draw their weapons, getting ready for combat. They quickly unleashed a barrage of attacks, aiming straight for the manticore's body. It roared and thrashed around, only capable of using petty tricks. It roared and thrashed around, only capable of using petty tricks. Ian's eyes were icy cold as he looked at the enemy. He snapped his fingers and pointed his staff forward. Oh, fire! The arrogance in the manticore's eyes was gone, replaced instead by sheer horror. Incinerate! A sudden flame erupted, burning the manticore up from the inside. In the end, only a terrified scream echoed in the evening breeze. Ian looked proudly at the blazing fire, which now only smoldered amidst a pile of ashes. After the fire died down, the town returned to its usual quiet. The residents, without a word, bowed in unison. "Thank you so much, Sir Knights," Ruta replied politely on behalf of the group. "We only did what we were supposed to do." Meanwhile, Ian stood there watching him shine in the spotlight with a strange look in his eyes. Oberon quickly leaned into his ear and whispered, "Master, have you been sidelined?" Furious and embarrassed, Ian snapped in a low voice, "Shut up." Actually, he already had a vague idea of the answer. They were probably afraid of him because he had turned the manticore into a fireball. But just then, the sound of footsteps snapped Ian back to reality. Roland and his father approached and spoke with deep respect. "Lord Mage, thank you for saving us." Ian was caught off guard by this situation, his tongue tying up while his mind swirled with awkwardness. It wasn't like he did it just to get thanked. "Ian," the man didn't hesitate to pour out a stream of flattering words. "You're truly impressive. We caught the manticore all thanks to you." Since the hospitality came so suddenly, Ian could only nervously reply with a textbook response. "I only did exactly what Monty said." Seeing an opponent who was old enough to be his uncle acting so submissive made Ian even more flustered. "Please, lift your head." His tone caught Ruta a bit by surprise. It was rare to see someone with such terrifying power have a personality like that. He stared intently at Ian's face and secretly made an assessment. A man like him might eventually become a major figure who puts even nobles to shame. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly approached closer. A group of soldiers turned toward Ian and Ruta, questioning them. Are you the ones who captured the Manticore? Ruta didn't hesitate to admit it right away. That's right. Then one of them quickly spoke up. Forgive the late introduction. We are knights stationed at the castle. Ian's curiosity was piqued by this specific term. The castle. The other party motioned to him as he spoke. Yes, if you don't mind, please come with us. Count Katina has requested your presence at the castle. As soon as the group was illuminated by the chandelier light, a rich voice echoed in their ears. Welcome, brave warriors. I didn't expect you to dare stand up against monsters in the name of the heavens. Katina swirled his wine glass, enthusiastically delivering a string of pleasantries. Truly righteous souls. Ruta awkwardly raised his glass, politely declining. No, it's not quite to that extent. Katina immediately sighed in disappointment. What a pity. He turned toward the group that was eating and drinking, making a passive-aggressive remark. If only this citadel had knights like you. With that, Katina quickly shifted his attention to another prominent figure. That's right, Mage Mani, you can rest assured. I won't let those clergymen touch the forest where you live. Having secured his word, she answered clearly, of course. After beating around the bush for so long, Katina finally faced the main character. Furthermore, Mage Ian, I've heard my niece talk about you. But before he could finish his sentence, he was rendered speechless by the sight of the boy eating like he was surviving famine. Only when Oberon couldn't bear to watch any longer and gave a low whisper of a warning did Ian stop. That guy is calling you, master. He instinctively blurted out. What? This utterly casual attitude froze Katina right in his tracks. To dare show him such an attitude, catching a whiff of displeasure from him, Ian's eyes narrowed slightly. He quickly managed the damage before the atmosphere grew any worse. Sorry, the food was so good I didn't hear you. I was just replying to my crow. Only then did Katina flash a satisfied, albeit forced smile. I see. He smoothly turned his broken record back on. I heard you took care of my niece. The moment those words left his mouth, the attendant beside him practically blinded Ian with a dazzling chest. He stammered for a while before squeezing out the words, this is... But looking inside, his mind clearly already had the answer. A golden grimoire. Detailed instructions on how to use it flashed through Ian's mind instantly. Just tear it in half, and a magic inside would activate immediately. He carefully lifted it up to examine it, his mind spinning more the longer he looked. Wow, I can actually feel the high quality in every single word. Katina waited for Ian to snap out of it before showing off smugly. Well, do you like it? I prepared it specifically for you. Ian didn't hesitate to hug the treasure tightly to his chest, returning the courtesy immediately. Thank you for such a precious gift. The man generously played along. It's nothing. Katina rubbed his index finger and thumb together, continuing to express himself. You brought Lucy back safely. Compared to that, this thing is nothing. The moment he finished speaking, he suddenly snapped his fingers. The door pulled open slightly to a small crack, as if by magic. Lucy walked in looking absolutely stunning under dozens of watching eyes. Only Ian ruined the moment by stifling a chuckle, complaining inwardly. What's up with that hat? The closer I look, the more I feel like my sense of aesthetics is being violated. Suddenly, Lucy cleared her throat to prep herself. A second later, she blushed and asked a completely bland question. Long time no see. Are you doing well? To make matters worse, Ian replied with even less flavor. Yeah, long time no see. Ruta caught a whiff of romance and immediately grinned, teasing them. Turns out she's not your sister, but your lover? Ian quickly picked up his wine glass to cover his embarrassment. It's not like that. It's just a situation. Katina didn't give him any time to settle down and chimed in. Ian, I have a proposal for you. He mechanically lifted his head and asked back. What is it? He glanced over at Lucy and said calmly. On this journey to avenge my niece, could you lend me your strength? Only now did it dawn on Ian. Right? The only things that fall from the sky for free are rain and bird crap. So that's why he gave me the golden grimoire. It's not like I actually have to risk my life on the battlefield. Ian stabilized himself incredibly fast and began running the numbers. I just need to provide a moderate amount of magic support, like when dealing with the Manticore. If things go smoothly, I might even get double the reward from both the Count and Lucy. since there's profit in it. Ian wasn't stupid enough to say no. If you need the help of a humble mage like myself, he lifted his head and announced very clearly, I will accompany you. 3 days later, the sound of conversation echoed outside the castle. My uncle is very sorry he couldn't see everyone off because he has to prepare for the campaign. No worries. Even though she was reassured, Lucy still politely promised, when everyone returns to the Tarian territory, I will host you myself. Ruta solemnly shook her hand and replied, looking forward to it. Ian, standing to the side, was silently thinking about the trade that had taken place. The number of knights had decreased significantly after being deployed by the Count. Suddenly, Ruta's voice pulled him back to the present. Ian, thank you for everything. He turned his attention to him and replied, likewise. Ruta took the opportunity to smoothly suggest, when you have time, come to Trifar Island. I'll introduce you to some mysteries you might find interesting. Just a hint was enough to get Ian looking incredibly intrigued. Trifar Island, he confidently explained in more detail. It's a floating island on the Coral Sea. Just say you're looking for Ruta, and everyone will definitely welcome you. Ian blurted out in surprise. Could that actually be your real name? The man easily admitted it. No harm in telling you. Suddenly, he placed his hand over his heart and introduced himself formally. My name is Salvador of the Argus family. Lucy's eyes suddenly widened to their limits as her mouth repeated, Salvador of Argus. She stammered to confirm one more time. No way. Salvador of the White Wolf. Awkward in the face of her enthusiasm, he brushed it off. No need to remember an old man's name. Ian, on the other hand, hadn't caught the wavelength yet and asked innocently, White Wolf. Lucy looked at him like he was an idiot and scolded. Don't you know? The White Wolf mercenary group once flourished under the former emperor. To their leader, the emperor at the time bestowed the ultimate title of Swordmaster. Lucy suddenly pointed forward and cried out in utter bewilderment. So this person is... Salvador scratched his face awkwardly as she stated his profession, a swordmaster. Seeing her so astonished, Ian wondered, what's with that reaction? Lucy suddenly cheered. That's a legend right there. A living legend. Seeing this, he just nodded indifferently. Uh-huh, a legend. Salvador burst out laughing at this. Just like you. Hearing that, Ian blanked out. What do you mean by that? An image popped into Salvador's mind. I will be the one to defeat the Swordmaster. Thinking of this, he smiled and looked at Ian. Never mind. Well then, we'll take our leave here. Monty, standing there, also took the chance to give instructions. Give my regards to Arides. Thank you for everything. Suddenly, Julian burst into tears and grabbed his hand tightly. We must meet again. Ian thought helplessly to himself. It's not like a permanent goodbye anyway. Suddenly, Salvador called out loudly, Ian. He then caught Ian's hand. Seeing this, he also politely looked at Salvador. When things settle down, I'll visit Trifar Island. Salvador's face lit up as he followed up. We shall meet again by then. After that, the two sides parted ways. Until that day comes, take care. Just then, over on Katina's side, he slowly walked up to the podium, but his face couldn't hide his deep thoughts. He blankly recalled how Lucy had knelt on the ground back then, crying and begging, Uncle, please punish the one who murdered Mother. Thinking up to this point, Katina's eyes hardened, emitting an indescribable murderous intent. To dare kill my sister, and even plan to hold a wedding with Lucy. However, for the Katina territory, this situation wasn't exactly bad either. Use Lucy as a shield to secure its territory, then marry her off to one of my subordinates. The Tarian territory will fall into my hands. Deep within Katina's eyes, absolute hatred was clearly visible. Back to Ian, he stared intently at Lucy's bright look. For now, after everything is wrapped up, I'll try talking to Lucy. Katina stood on the podium with fierce determination. In the name of the law of this land, I will pass judgment on the corrupted who deserve to die. The soldiers below also cheered in unison. Long live the Count. Katina grew even more determined now. Everyone, follow me. The soldiers quickly took the order. Yes, sir. Night had now fallen over the camp. In the kitchen area, Ian was busy fiddling with something. Lucy and two soldiers sitting nearby wondered, Ian, what are you doing? He stared intently at the pot of boiling water. I'm boiling a spoon. Hearing this, a thought popped into Lucy's mind. Why? Are you planning to boil it and eat it? Suddenly, the two soldiers whispered from afar. I heard the mage is cooking spoon soup. Stay away. Hearing them talk like that, he cursed inwardly. Idiots, I'm sterilizing. Sitting close enough to hear, Lucy looked puzzled. Sterilizing? Seeing her look so clueless, Ian explained. It's basically like mystery. You wouldn't understand, even if I explained it. The two soldiers were even more shocked than Lucy upon hearing this. Mystery. Shortly after, a voice called out from behind Ian. Lord Mage. The two soldiers approached awkwardly. Could you boil this for me too? Seeing them act like this made Ian's blood boil. I already told you, it's not soup. At night, while the whole camp was enjoying their time together, Lucy suddenly let out a sigh. Hey, Ian, I've been thinking about something. Hearing this, Ian frowned and looked at her. What is it? Lucy glanced over at him. Your promised reward. Hearing that, Ian remembered. Oh, right. Lucy looked at Ian seriously. I was planning to give you gold, but you're probably bored of that by now, right? The moment Lucy finished speaking, Ian's eyes widened in horror. Lucy said with a smile, so I thought about it for a long time to see what would satisfy you. And the result is... He looked at her skeptically. Consequently, Lucy began to tell him about the magic sword Anori Shill. That is a gift given by the ancient ancestors to the first-generation Barentarian. Legend has it that the Baron fell in love with a fairy and took up that sword to become the savior of the fairy realm. Legend has it that the Baron fell in love with a fairy and took up that sword to become the savior of the fairy realm. He frowned and looked at Lucy. If Tarion has such a powerful magic sword, why are you guys still just Barons? She immediately shot back. That was 400 years ago. Ian asked indifferently. So what? Well, Lucy smiled shyly. Anori Shill is buried in the tomb of the first Baron. So if you want to get it, you have to dig up the grave. Hearing this, Ian's eyes went wide and his jaw dropped, his face unable to hide his horror. A descendant is going to dig up something their ancestor buried with their own hands just to give it to someone else. Ian's face turned pale as he looked at Lucy. So your ancestral tomb is a time capsule? Lucy was caught off guard by the question and looked puzzled. What? Ian then blurted out curiously. I don't quite get it. But it is a magic sword, right? And it looks valuable. Shouldn't it be better off being used by your family? That's better than just letting it serve as a bragging right for the Baron forever, isn't it? Lucy pouted and said to Ian, I haven't received anything back yet, but thanks to you I got the right to fight, and I'm very grateful for that. As she spoke, she clenched her hands tightly together. It's precious enough that I want to give it to you as a token of my gratitude. Lucy suddenly stood straight up. That's why I said I'd give you that valuable item. She turned her back and walked away in frustration. Idiot. Seeing her run off, Ian panicked. Lucy, he was left behind, quietly watching her retreating figure. Maybe I crossed the line a bit. Just then, someone approached. Mage, the Count has a favor to ask of you. As the night grew later, shouting echoed from a corner of the camp. If you don't want our heads on pikes, beat it. You damn thieves. One guy with an arrogant, defiant look sneered. We should be the ones saying that. Just hand over 3 chickens, and we'll leave you alone. Immediately, Helmet stepped up close to the man. We have a battle to fight, get it? If we go out there starving, how are we going to have any strength left, right? Suddenly, that guy's face turned pale, and he pointed up toward the tree canopy in a panic. Doesn't that crow look just like the one the mage keeps? Helmet looked up thoughtfully. Doesn't that crow look just like the one the mage keeps? Helmet looked up thoughtfully. This guy along with Helmet turned pale as ghosts. What the hell? A damn talking crow. Immediately, a voice called out from behind the 3 of them. Hey! This made the group turn around trembling, their faces completely green. Ian walked up and frowned at the 3 men standing in front of him. What the hell do you think you're doing? Under the dim, flickering candlelight inside the tent, Katina spoke first with a grim expression. Ian, I have a favor to ask. He kept his usual calm demeanor and asked back. What is it? He coughed a few times, looking extremely hesitant. Ian looked at him and wondered. He looks like he's finding it hard to speak. What on earth is it? After a moment of hesitation, Katina finally decided to speak out. I want you to stop the misconduct of the mercenaries in this town. Ian was surprised for a moment and asked back. Wouldn't the knights be better suited for that? He rubbed his fingers together and explained slowly. Because the knights and the mercenaries are in cahoots, they often cover up each other's crimes and turn a blind eye. Of course, that's to maintain the mercenaries' morale. I used to tolerate a certain amount of looting, but this is my niece's territory. I'm counting on you. As long as you give them a warning, the mercenaries will know their limits. Looking at Ian's pitch-black expression, the soldiers hugged each other and shook violently. He questioned them in an icy tone. How dare you break into citizens' houses like thieves and bandits? Oberon perched on his shoulder and chimed in, punish. Ian slammed his staff hard against the ground as a warning. I will make an example out of you. Oberon eagerly agreed, punish. The three men quickly admitted their fault. We're sorry, Lord Mage. We will reform our ways. After that, Ian and Oberon only needed to catch a few of them, and the rest became so terrified they didn't dare show their faces outside. The mercenaries all hid indoors, trembling and muttering. If we go out now, we're toast. The Count and Lucy were overjoyed when they heard the news, but Bruno solemnly dropped to one knee to report. Lord Count, we have a serious problem. As it turns out, another unexpected trouble has arisen. Bruno continued his briefing. As for the usurper, our army is no longer a threat. Ian immediately questioned. Even though we have over 400 troops? He lowered his head and explained. Because our army is completely harmless. He repeated with a puzzled look, harmless. If the army were plundering the territory, the people here would have pressured Graham to stop the invasion long ago. Because Graham is controlling the Tarian territory. But thanks to our peaceful march, Graham actually has time to gather his forces. Not to mention, since our troops can't act freely, their morale has dropped drastically. Ian rested his chin on his hand and thought, this has truly become a bizarre situation. Bruno lifted his head, his voice full of hesitation. My lord, will you permit us to start plundering from now on? Katina wearily massaged his forehead. He slowly looked over at Ian, asking for his opinion. Mage, do you have any strategy to handle this situation? Lucy beside him also looked over at him with a worried gaze. Ian's eyes grew sharper. He rested his chin on his hand, thought for a few seconds, and then spoke slowly. Right now, it's not like we're completely out of options. Katina's eyes lit up, and he asked hurriedly, what option? Out with it. Lucy praised him with an adoring gaze. That's Ian for you. In contrast to the two of them, several soldiers standing behind showed clear annoyance. Lucas grumbled under his breath. This mage is so arrogant. Somewhere in the Tarian territory, Henrik shoved the door open violently, snapping irritably. So noisy, you annoying crow. Ian's face suddenly magnified right in front of his eyes, making him jump back with a scream. Henrik took a few steps back and asked hesitantly, who are you? Ian didn't answer but asked back, are you the owner of this wheat field? He still hadn't recovered his composure, his voice shaking with panic. I asked who you are. A soldier behind them interrupted impatiently. Hey, this gentleman is the disciple of the great Archmage Arides, Lord Ian Arides Raven. Hearing that name, Henrik's face instantly went dark. He prostrated himself on the ground in a panic, begging, I didn't realize it was such a famous figure. Please forgive my rudeness just now. Ian glanced at him, gritted his teeth, and announced, the wheat here is completely ruined. Henrik looked up in a daze and asked back, what do you mean by that, my lord? Ian slammed his staff hard on the ground and shouted, can't you feel it? An evil energy has seeped into this field. The soul of the first Baron of Tarian, who was unjustly stripped of his territory, is furious. Shaking all over with tears streaming down his face, he asked anxiously, then what should I do? Ian tapped his staff on the ground and frowned in warning. Hold on. Quiet. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Ian raised his hand toward the sky and said theatrically, the sky is speaking. As long as Lucy Tarian inherits the barony, the wrath will subside. That's how it is. Oh my, there's ominous evil energy over there too. The moment he finished speaking, he ran off, and the group of soldiers hurriedly called out and chased after him. Lord Mage, he shouted loudly as he walked. To think the territory has fallen into such ruin because of a usurper like that. After a while, the rumors he spread seemed to have worked. The people of Tarian began to grow resentful toward Graham. They demanded that Lucy take the throne to escape the calamity. The citizens kept pelting his front door with tomatoes. Thanks to that, the Count's army saw their morale soar and marched straight toward Graham's residence. Amidst that cheerful atmosphere, Lucas stood at a distance, looking at him with deep dissatisfaction. At the camp, he stood up in protest. Lord Count, we don't want to stand on a shameful battlefield. Katina asked back in confusion. What do you mean by that? Lucas immediately accused. Ian is spreading rumors that the territory is cursed. He's bringing disaster upon us. If we keep staying with a mage like that, our honor will be dragged through the mud. He's bringing disaster upon us. If we keep staying with a mage like that, our honor will be dragged through the mud. The whole crowd simultaneously objected even more fiercely. We can't believe a single word this mage says. Yeah, he's definitely trying to trick us. He watched the scene in silence, his eyes gradually darkening as he figured it out. In other words, since they have no way to tell truth from lies, they just automatically assume everything I say is a lie. How frustrating. But the main force of war is the knights. The Count's expression also showed he understood that. Without knights, they couldn't form a battle array. So in the end, they just had to go along with their side. Under these circumstances, do I even need to stay? Looking at Katina's hesitant face, Ian finally took the initiative to speak first. You don't need to worry, Count. The man jumped up and called after Ian. He turned to leave, but didn't forget to emphasize, if my presence makes everyone that uncomfortable, I'll leave. But from now on, no matter what happens, don't even think about calling on me for help.